He was merely a young shepherd boy from a remote border village. Yet when faced with a ridiculously powerful magical beast, there was not the slightest trace of fear on his face. With just a flick of the long whip in his hand, he killed the leopard-like magical beast on the spot. When Taran was 10 years old, he discovered that he possessed this kind of power. At that time, he had been eager to tell his mother. He said that he could make wood float. Not only that, he also said he could create fire and summon wind. But the moment his mother heard this, she instantly lashed out at him in anger. That was the first time he had ever seen her angry, and also the last. After his mother's anger gradually subsided, she called Taran to her side, wanting to have a proper talk with him. She asked Taran whether he wanted to keep living together with her. If he did, then he had to promise her one thing. From that day on, he must never use that power again, and he absolutely could not let anyone discover it. Taran did not understand why, so his mother asked him, "Do you still remember the stories about nobles and knights?" Taran said of course he remembered. She then told him, whether noble or knight, anyone who possessed this special ability would be called a wizard. But nobles and knights were different in essence. Nobles were descendants of the holy people, the Frans, who descended upon the world to save the humans of the old age. As for knights, they were descendants of nobles whose bloodline had mixed with that of humans. So even though they were all wizards, people would still treat nobles and knights separately. And that was exactly why she had to tell Taran why he could not use this power. Because he had inherited his father's knightly power. Outside this town, there were many evil nobles who would treat knights as slaves. So you must remember, you must never let anyone know that you are a wizard. You can promise me that, right? From that day on, for a full 8 years, Taran kept the promise he had made to his mother. But one day, a young man from the village came running to tell the elder. A monster had recently appeared on the edge of the village. That monster was wrapped in pitch-black shadow from head to toe, like a leopard as large as a house. The villagers were all uneasy, but the village chief had already gone into the city to bring back a wizard. As long as the chief brought a wizard back, that monster would surely be subdued. After hearing this, the elder reminded them, "You all must be more careful. Without a wizard, it was almost impossible to kill a monster." The young man replied, "The villagers had already been warned, but not him yet." The elder froze for a moment. "Who is the him you mean?" The young man then told the elder. It was Taran, the shepherd living on Mount Hizaron. At that moment, Taran was lying on a lush green grassy slope, staring boredly at the pale blue sky. The same scenery, the same life day after day. If things went on like this, he would soon forget how to even open his mouth and speak. Just as the boredom was giving him a headache, a voice came, "Poor little brat. The sun hasn't even set yet, and you're already lying here slacking off?" After seeing who it was, Taran directly told him to get lost. "Don't block my sunlight." The man said irritably that Taran had no manners. "Are you still holding a grudge over what happened back then?" "What happened back then?" Taran asked coldly. "You mean when my mother died and you tried to secretly turn my sheep into public property?" The man coughed dryly twice and did not argue. Taran continued, "If that's what you mean, then yes. I'm not that generous. I won't share what my mother left behind with anyone else. Besides, we're not close enough to exchange greetings. Why did you come here? Say it and leave." These words made the old man want to scold Taran on the spot. But Taran's cold gaze cut him off abruptly. The old man averted his eyes, deliberately avoiding Taran's stare. He told Taran that a monster had appeared near the village. It was said to be a leopard as large as a house, and Rob was the one who had discovered it. After hearing this, Taran showed no fear at all. He merely stroked the lamb in front of him and said that it really was troublesome. The old man grew even more puzzled. "You're not afraid? Around here, you're the most likely one to be targeted. I really don't know where you get your nerve from. Anyway, the village chief has already gone into the city to bring back a wizard, so be careful. I'm only warning you because I'm worried about you." The moment he finished speaking, Taran replied coldly, "You are too hypocritical. Why not just say directly that you're worried about the sheep? Why insist on saying you're worried about me? Now that you're done talking, hurry up and get lost. That filthy mouth of yours will only make the air stink if you stay here." The elder trembled with rage, turned around, and walked back the way he had come. In this world, the only beings that could be called monsters were beasts that possessed mysterious powers and magic. If there were wizards above humans, then there were monsters above beasts. For a wizard to come to a remote village like this because of a monster, it seemed Taran would finally get to see a wizard with his own eyes. But if they were wizards brought from the city by the village chief, they might not be anything particularly remarkable, even if they really were wizards. Still, Taran wanted to see with his own eyes what kind of beings they really were. And at that very moment, Taran's keen nose caught a scent. This smell, it was blood. Taran immediately followed the scent of blood. When he reached the source of the smell, he saw that the old man who had spoken with him just now was already dead. He had clearly come to warn Taran to be careful, yet he himself had been attacked first. Judging from the wound, this was definitely not something an ordinary beast could have done. Then it could only be the monster he had spoken of. Turan suddenly sensed movement all around him. As that movement drew closer, he saw with his own eyes the leopard-like monster the old man had described, huge as a house. At the same time, a child at home asked his father, "Can the grown-ups really not defeat that monster?" His father answered, "That's right. If ordinary people like us rush at it, I'm afraid not even our bones would be found again." The child asked worriedly, "Then what will happen to our village?" His father comforted him softly, "Don't be afraid. The village chief will bring back a wizard. Wizards can subdue monsters." But the child still asked innocently, "A wizard can definitely defeat it, right?" His father said, "They are great beings born with magical power. With just a single word, they can destroy those terrifying monsters." And at that moment, Turan was quietly watching that ferocious leopard-like magical beast. He softly uttered a single sentence. In the next second, the leopard-like magical beast actually retreated several meters. Because in that instant, it had smelled the aura of a hunter from Turan. Watching its reaction, Turan muttered in a low voice, "So it doesn't work anymore?" Immediately after that, the magical beast once again viciously pounced on Turan. Turan shouted, "Stop." The leopard-like magical beast was once again driven back several meters by his voice. So it really doesn't work anymore. Otherwise, it wouldn't be unable to stop even after being told to stop. Just then, the leopard-like magical beast raised its sharp claws and smashed them down toward Turan. The golden markings on its face made its savagery utterly plain to see. Before the claws could fall, Turan had already darted to the other side. Seeing how frenziedly ferocious it was, Turan let out a soft sigh. "In that case, I'll use the method a shepherd should use." The magical beast saw him assume that posture and immediately gathered itself to pounce. Turan spoke 2 words toward the stone on his left, "Harden." Then he tightly wrapped the stone with the long whip in his right hand. A golden light also lit up in his eyes. Then he swung the long whip. As he stepped forward, he spoke again, "Faster." The instant the whip lashed out, the stone shot forth like a cannonball, hurtling straight toward that savage magical beast. A loud bang rang out. The stone grazed past the side of the leopard-like magical beast's ear, instantly bringing up a spray of blood. The magical beast flew into a rage on the spot, baring claws and fangs as it lunged at Turan like mad. But what Turan had truly aimed at just now had never been its ear, but its head. Almost in the very next instant, the stone pierced straight through its skull. Looking at the magical beast collapse dead onto the ground, Turan murmured to himself, "This is the first time I've used this ability on a monster. But now, should I throw you into some ravine, or what should I do?" Turan could not help but curse once. Those bastards in the village really know how to cause trouble. After handling all of this, he returned to his home on the mountain. Because he had once promised his mother, he had never told anyone that he was a wizard, nor had he ever used that power in plain sight of everyone. Just as he was about to rest, there was a sudden urgent knock at the door. The person outside shouted his name while pounding on it. Turan had only just pulled the door open when he saw a group of villagers staring at him with fierce looks. It turned out they had come to ask about the old man who had gone to see Turan earlier. He let out a yawn and asked indifferently, "Are you trying to say that I killed Rabus?" Before he could even finish speaking, the burly man at the front grabbed him by the collar, glared at him, and roared, "Yes, it was you, you damned bastard. You harmed that innocent old man and even threw him to the monster as food." Turan was silent for a moment before speaking. "I understand why you want to pin this on me. You're afraid of the monster and don't dare fight it, so all you know how to do is run. As a result, the oldest man in the village got dragged into it and died. You're afraid others will call you cowards, so you want to shift the blame onto me." The man grew even angrier after hearing this and raised his fist, about to knock Turan down hard. But Turan merely tilted slightly to one side and dodged it. To Turan, magic was the easiest way to solve things. As long as he strongly desired something, it would come true at the cost of consuming magic power. Turan softly uttered the word, "Fall," and someone in the crowd immediately crashed hard to the ground. To suppress them, there was actually no need for flames or any kind of direct attack. Just a little inconspicuous force was enough. It would not go so far as to kill anyone, but it could still pin them to the ground with absolute pressure. This was how, all these years, he had hidden the fact that he was a wizard. Looking at the people sprawled all over the ground, Turan let out a long sigh. If only you had used this energy at Braza's funeral. He then turned and asked the group of women beside them, "Did you come to fight too?" They hurriedly explained that they had not. They had only come to see him. Turan was silent for a while, then told them to take these people back. After dealing with all these annoying matters, he finally prepared to take off his clothes and rest. Turan knew very well that after that commotion just now, the village would definitely become even more chaotic. When he went down the mountain to trade, they would surely take the chance to extort him. But it did not matter. At worst, he would just beat them until they were willing to offer a fair price. Just then, a voice interrupted Turan's thoughts. Turan muttered under his breath, "Are those people crazy? They've come back to pick a fight again so soon." He yanked the door open, about to shout at them angrily. But to his surprise, the person standing outside was actually a middle-aged man. Turan frowned and asked who he was. The man paused for a moment and said, "Forgive my intrusion. I originally wanted to ask you for a favor during my journey, but it seems, this may not be a suitable time." When Turan learned that the man was a traveler, he fell silent for a moment. He then apologized, saying that he had just driven away a few unwelcome guests and had thought they had come back again. These formal expressions were all things his mother had once taught him, but because of that miserable village, he had almost never really spoken properly with anyone, which made him feel somewhat awkward. Looking at the man's outfit, Turan grew even more puzzled. Why would a traveler carrying a sword come to such a remote little town? He asked, "Are you looking for an inn?" The moment he said it, he heard the sound of the man's stomach growling. Turan let out a sigh, but still opened the door and let him in. After preparing a little food for him, Turan said that his household was poor and he had nothing much to offer. While gulping the food down, the man said this already counted as a feast. Then he asked Turan, "Have you never seen people from outside the village?" Turan replied, "That's right. I grew up on this mountain from childhood, living only by herding sheep, and there are rarely outsiders in this small town either." Those words made the man lift his eyes toward Turan, finding him very interesting. Because for a shepherd who had grown up here since childhood, Turan was far too familiar with proper manners. The man praised Turan's parents, saying they must have taught him well. Turan said that his mother had taught him all of that, but she had passed away a few years ago. Regretfully, the man made a gesture of prayer and said that having raised such a proud son as Turan, she must surely be proud in heaven. He then thanked Turan once again. Turan said he was only living in the way his mother had taught him, and then asked curiously, "Why did you come running to such a remote countryside place?" The man told Turan that someone had asked him to help, to deal with a leopard-like monster. The moment Turan heard those words, his whole body froze on the spot. He immediately pressed on. "You're the wizard the village chief mentioned, aren't you?" The other man admitted it straightforwardly. "I am that wizard. Now, may I ask you a question?" Turan did not hesitate and nodded at once. The man then asked. He had sensed that the monster was in this area, yet he had found no trace of it. Even stranger, although Turan clearly knew about the village chief and the monster, he remained calm and had not even fled. If that monster were going to attack a human, the first one it would target would definitely be you. Are you really not afraid? For a shepherd who has never left this little town, you're far too unusual and far too brave. So who exactly are you? Are you a wizard? Those words dragged Turan's memory back to the days when his mother was still alive. Back then, he had asked his mother, why must no one ever know that he was a wizard? His mother had told him, it was all because of those evil nobles. If nobles are compared to shepherds, then knights are like the dogs raised by shepherds. They may love you as if you were family, but when needed, they will sell you, or even sacrifice you. So I don't want you to live that kind of life. Turan, do you want to keep living like this with your mother forever? If you do, then remember this. Never let anyone know that you are a wizard, especially other wizards. Once they discover it, they will tear us apart, turn you into their sheepdog, and cast you aside whenever necessary. To keep from being recognized, you may even be forced to kill people. At that moment the man asked again, why aren't you saying anything? Did my joke just now go too far? After saying that, he scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Turan was silent for a moment, then apologized in a low voice, saying that he did not really understand humor. The man shook his head and said that he was the one who should apologize. Sorry, I shouldn't have joked like that just now. Turan forced out a slight smile and said it was his first time hearing a wizard make a joke, so he had not reacted right away. But the man said Turan's reaction had been so interesting that he could not help teasing him a little, though it really had gone a bit too far. After saying that, he held out his hand to Turan and said that after talking for so long, they still had not properly introduced themselves. It's a pleasure to meet you. I am the traveler Kane. Turan also reached out and shook his hand. My name is Turan. I'm a shepherd, and I'm 18 this year. Kane casually stated his age, 75. Turan froze for a moment and asked, you don't look that old. Kane said that wizards lived longer than ordinary people and also aged more slowly. Turan then asked him why he had become a traveler. Kane said that he had served the Albion family for 60 years, and later chose to leave, wanting to spend his later years wandering everywhere and living a rootless life. And so, the two exchanged their own stories. For the first time in Turan's life, he was chatting with someone this easily. Without realizing it, evening was already approaching. Kane stood up and said that he should be going. He reached out and placed a silver coin on the dining table, saying it was an Arab silver coin, one of the purest silver coins, and more than enough to pay for the meal. Turan also stood and thanked him. May your hunt go smoothly in every way. Kane walked to the door, then turned back and told Tehran that he would probably be staying here for the next few days, so he might come by again to mooch a few more meals. A few days later, as usual, Tehran drove the flock up to the hillside to graze, and once they had eaten and drunk their fill, he shouted, "Gather!" At once, the sheep all around raised their heads, and moved toward Tehran. Even now, Tehran was still immersed in yesterday's conversation, his mood unusually light. This was the first time he had met a wizard, and also the first time he had talked with someone so freely. Kane always spoke with easy humor, and his way of speaking and breadth of knowledge far surpassed the adults in the village. And over the past few days together, Tehran had also confirmed one thing: Kane really was a good man. In the past, Tehran had always believed that knights were nothing more than merciless towns trained by arrogant nobles. But Tehran did not know how to tell Kane that there was no longer any monster on Mount Hizaral. Meanwhile, Kane was searching the mountain forest for traces of the monster. What made him feel that something was wrong was that clear signs of battle remained here, yet he could not sense the slightest trace of its aura. Could that monster already have been hunted down? But who did it? Or did the village chief give the task to another wizard besides Tehran? He could not help letting out a sigh of relief. He did not care who had killed it, as long as this place was safe, that was what mattered most. But at that moment, Kane suddenly sensed something unusual, and he spun around sharply, looking behind him. A sharp claw instantly came right before his eyes, and the owner of that claw was a hideous monster. A huge wound split open its skull, and tiny fangs had grown around the edges of the wound. Kane's heart sank as he muttered in confusion, "The wraith of a monster? Who on earth did this?" Before he could sort out his thoughts, the monster's claw thrust straight at him, and with a loud bang, it smashed heavily into the spot where Kane had been standing just moments before. A chill ran through Kane. After killing the monster, why had that wizard not absorbed or dispersed the magic power in the corpse? Logically, any wizard who hunted a monster should have known that. Yet he had allowed the corpse to turn into a wraith? Unless, he was just a novice knight who did not know the common rule that if magic power is not absorbed, it will become a wraith. Or perhaps they had some other purpose. But whatever the reason, he had to destroy it now. At once, a golden arrow condensed in Kane's palm, and shot straight toward the monster. But the moment the golden arrow touched the monster, it shattered directly into powder. Kane's pupils contracted. My magic is ineffective? Could its magic power be far above mine? In the next instant, the monster vanished from before Kane's eyes. Kane quickly swept his gaze around, trying to determine where it had gone. At that moment, a string of bubbles rose from his shadow. Immediately after, a grotesque claw suddenly shot out from beneath the shadow. At the very instant the claw was about to hit him, Kane barely reacted in time and narrowly dodged it. Lowering his head to look at the wound on his hand, he was shaken to the core. This was not a level that some mere knight could handle at all. At the very least, only a lower-ranking noble would stand a chance. He had never expected to encounter a monster wraith of this level in such a remote mountain village. Life truly was full of surprises. He lowered his head at once and made up his mind. He would not die like this. Even if he had to die, he would take it down with him. He forced all his magic power into his palm, preparing to pierce its vital point the instant the monster lunged. At the very moment the monster once again formed its claws, Kane was also about to unleash his strongest killing move. And just at that critical moment, a blue light suddenly flashed through the forest, and in the next second, it pierced straight through the monster's head. Kane stared at the scene before him in shock. The wraith that had been absurdly powerful just moments ago had simply collapsed like that. Then a voice sounded by his ear. "Are you all right?" When Kane saw that it was Tehran, he said in a low voice, "The shepherd is a wizard. That kind of joke really can get someone killed." "So Tehran, you really are a wizard?" As he reeled in the whip in his hand, Tehran calmly admitted it. Kane frowned and asked why he had not told him earlier. Seeing Tehran remain silent, Kane changed his words. "Then let me ask a different question. Why did you save me just now? You could have just walked away." Tehran muttered quietly, "Maybe, because I'm kind." He remembered that earlier conversation he had had with Kane. Back then, Tehran had asked Kane why he would go so far. With his abilities, earning much more money would have been effortless, so why had he still agreed to come hunt the monster for the village chief? Kane had smiled. Because they are pitiful people, living in such a remote place, without even basic protection. How could they not be pitiful? Hearing that, Tehran had replied, "But that's not your fault." Yet Kane had said, "Mages are born inheriting the power of the gods, so they ought to protect those who are unarmed." Of course, not all mages think that way, but in his view, every person ought to have their own beliefs and their own way of living. So Tehran repeated the words, "Every person ought to have their own beliefs and their own way of living." But at that moment, the wraith that had already collapsed suddenly sprang up again and lunged at them once more. After the two of them dodged the attack, Kane immediately made Tehran understand clearly, this monster's level was not something they could confront head-on. Unless one was a noble, no one could face it directly. He told Tehran to notify the village chief and evacuate the villagers at once. As for himself, he would stay here and hold it off. He knew he was overreaching, and he had no idea how long he could last, but he still chose to stand his ground. Tehran said only one thing, "It's all right." After saying that, he activated the magic power within him. Watching Tehran's movements, Cain was shaken. So that strike just now had not even been his full strength? A young knight hidden away in the mountains could actually hunt a wight that even nobles had to treat with caution? This was the judgment of the old knight Cain at that moment. Because what he saw before him was neither the bluff of a mountain boy nor the reckless impulse of a fugitive knight. What entered his sight at that moment might well become the beginning of something that would overturn the world of wizards. The stones on the ground around them slowly rose into the air under Tehran's control. At that moment, Tehran wanted to confirm only one thing. Where exactly was his limit? Cain beside him no longer hesitated either. He said he could not let Tehran fight alone. No matter how great his talent, that thing was extremely difficult to deal with. They had to join forces if they wanted any chance of winning. But with a loud bang, Cain realized that he would only get in the way. He had not even had time to react to that last move. Realizing that he could not help, Cain made an important decision. To let Tehran's talent fully bloom at this very moment. While Tehran kept dodging the Wraith's attacks, Cain shouted, "A Wraith can't be killed by physical attacks." Tehran immediately pressed, "Then what should I use?" Cain answered, "Fire, or lightning." No sooner had he spoken than Tehran formed a mass of flame on the Wraith's body, but the fire failed to stir even the slightest effect. Tehran said in a low voice, "This is completely useless." Only then did Cain realize that Tehran did not even understand the most basic common knowledge of wizards. At that moment, a terrifying suspicion flashed through Cain's mind. Could this Wraith have been left behind after Tehran killed the monster? If so, that would mean Tehran had never absorbed any magic power in his entire life. Cain immediately told Tehran, "Don't let the fire cling to its body first. Compress the flames into a ball, then shoot it out." In the next second, a small fireball formed in Tehran's palm. Tehran raised his hand and pointed toward the sky, and the small fireball suddenly began spinning faster. Then he stepped forward with his left foot, and hurled the fireball fiercely at the monster with his right hand. With a bang, the Wraith's entire body instantly burst into roaring flames. From not far away, Cain immediately shouted, "Don't relax, keep pouring in magic power, and burn this Wraith until not a trace of it remains." Tehran did as he said, letting the blazing fire continue devouring its form. Watching this, Cain finally let out a breath of relief. They had won. That powerful Wraith, one that required at least noble-level strength to contend with, had been dealt with just like that, and it had been done by a shepherd boy from a remote mountain village. Cain then urged Tehran, "If you don't want to encounter another Wraith, absorb its magic power at once." Hearing that, Tehran asked him how to do it. Cain said, "Stand in front of the corpse and imagine pulling something into your body." Tehran slowly closed his eyes and imagined it as Cain instructed. Strands of green light rose from the monster's remains and flowed into Tehran's palm. The moment Tehran opened his eyes, he felt as though a strange and powerful force had been poured throughout his body. And Cain, standing behind him, spoke as well. "Do you feel a kind of pleasure welling up from inside your body? If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would never have believed it. This is actually your first time absorbing magic power. After awakening, magic power grows slowly with age, but the fastest way to increase it is to kill monsters or wizards and absorb their magic power." That made Cain find it hard to believe. Without ever having absorbed any magic power, Tehran had still been able to wield magic of that level. Such talent was simply terrifying. Cain called out Tehran's name. "I apologize for my earlier rudeness. May I ask, which family do you come from?" The words "which family" left Tehran confused, but he still reminded Cain, "You should deal with your wound first." Only then did Cain remember that his arm was still bleeding without stopping. After returning to his dwelling, Tehran simply bandaged his wound for him. Looking completely at ease, Cain said softly, "How strange. Someone as noble as you would actually do something like this for me." Tehran answered helplessly, "I've told you many times, I'm not noble. I'm just a shepherd who doesn't even know who his real father is, so stop saying things like that." Seeing Tehran's eyes fixed straight on him, Cain finally agreed slowly, though he still felt puzzled inside. Why would a wizard as strong as Tehran be a shepherd? Of course, he did not mean it as an insult. He simply felt that such a life did not suit Tehran. Tehran told him that it had been his mother's dying wish. From as far back as he could remember, she had made him live that way, until the very moment she passed away. Cain listened in astonishment, completely unable to understand why she would leave such a wish behind. Then Tehran seriously explained it to him using the very words his mother had once given him. Looking at him, Cain said, "Your mother's decision was very wise." Those words stunned Tehran. He had thought Cain would say it was merely overprotection, but Cain denied that. Wizards truly possessed great power. but power inevitably invited conflict. More than 20 years ago, several noble families had erupted into a great war. The Albion family, whom Cain had served, had once gone to war with the Zahar family, and far too many people had died in that conflict. Of the more than 3,000 Albion knights who fought in that war, over 900 were killed. Even crueler, every person close to Cain had been among those 900. His friend always said that after the war he would open a laundry shop. His teacher was always scolding him, saying he still had a long way to go. And his beloved wife and son, they were slaughtered by the Zahar family, until in the end he alone was left alive. So in a sense, Turan's mother had been right. The life of a knight sometimes disappeared more easily than that of a commoner, and could more easily become meaningless. But she was also wrong about one thing: she underestimated your talent. It may not be very dignified for me to say this in my current state, but I really was once considered a fairly skilled knight. Yet compared with someone like you, who has never absorbed any magic power, I am nothing at all. You should understand how strong your talent is. At the very least, you have talent on the level of a noble. Even among nobles, you would count as top tier. Turan listened in a daze. Could it be that his father had not been a knight? Cain slowly rose to his feet. In very rare cases, nobles can also give birth to children with poor talent. Knights can also produce children with noble-level talent. So in a sense, I actually think it would be best for you to leave this place and see the world outside. Turan asked him why, and Cain answered, humanity needed more nobles and knights, because humanity had not yet truly become the master of this world. A long time ago, the other races banished by the gods were still waiting in the shadows for a chance to return. But the nobles of today care only about fighting among themselves. That is why this age needs powerful and kind nobles like you even more. Of course, the most important thing is, you probably aren't satisfied with being only a shepherd anymore, are you? Turan was silent for a moment, then asked him, if he left the mountain, what could he gain? Cain said, that depends on what you want. Fame, power, or friendship, those things are hard to obtain here. You could travel everywhere as I do, eliminating monsters that threaten humanity. You could also become an adventurer exploring the unknown, or be adopted by some family and step onto the path of power. Only then did Turan truly understand what Cain meant. Those things really were more attractive than herding sheep every day. Turan thanked Cain. This was the first time he had felt genuine curiosity about the outside world. Cain said he would support whichever path Turan chose. Then he asked Turan, what is your bloodline ability? Seeing Turan's face full of confusion, Cain seemed to remember something and immediately added, sorry, I keep forgetting that you actually don't understand magic. A bloodline ability was a trait that nobles inherited from their ancestor, the Freyans. Whether or not one had a bloodline ability was also an important standard for distinguishing nobles from knights. He formed a small fireball in his palm and asked Turan, when you use magic, is there any kind of spell that comes especially easily to you? Or do you have some particularly unusual ability? After hearing that, Turan began sorting through the possibilities Cain had mentioned in his mind. Then he told Cain that his sense of smell was very sharp, and that he was especially accurate at throwing stones. Cain said that if his sense of smell was abnormally strong, then it was very likely a bloodline ability. Skill with projectile weapons was one of the Albion family's specialties, but that was actually considered a very common talent. Cain continued asking for more specific details, but after Turan finished explaining them, he saw Cain's expression darken at once. What is it? Cain said quietly that he might know which family Turan's bloodline was closest to. It was a powerful family, known as pursuers, and also as hunters, Zahar. It was also the same family that had once slaughtered the Albion family in war. Those words left Turan frozen on the spot. He had never imagined that his family was actually Zahar, the very family that had killed all of Cain's loved ones. For a moment, Turan did not know what he should say to Cain. Should he apologize? But those acts had been committed by relatives he had never even met. To him, they were almost the crimes of strangers. Cain suddenly spoke. Turan, you don't need to make that kind of face. You did not personally take part in that war. Turan understood what Cain meant, yet still did not know how to respond. Cain put on his usual restrained smile again and said that this was the predicament of adults. If people always wanted to wash blood with blood and repay hatred with hatred, then conflict would never end. Turan asked Cain, then regarding his wanting to go down the mountain, did Cain feel no regret? Cain patted Turan on the shoulder and said, if you go down the mountain and pursue power, then in the end you will very likely join the Zahar family. Someone with your talent is bound to attract attention. But I trust your character. You saved me and even exposed the identity you had meant to hide all your life. So I believe that if you enter Zahar, and even rise to a high position, then perhaps you could instead prevent the next terrible war. But you do not need to force yourself to decide right now, and you still have not decided to join Zahar. At that moment, Turan said that he thought he might have made up his mind, and that he wanted to try going down the mountain. But not yet, he would leave after Kane's injury had improved somewhat. Kane said it was only a scratch, but he did not refuse Tehran's kindness. From that day on, Kane taught Tehran the basics of magic every day. To cast magic, one first had to possess magic power. Magic power was the key that opened magic, but keys also had types, and whatever kind of magic one wanted to use had to be matched with the proper kind of magic power. Tehran asked what the standard for matching was, and Kane explained. It is mainly determined by three things: bloodline, affinity, and causality. The first is bloodline. It depends on the blood you are born with, and this applies to most nobles who are not knights. For example, it would be difficult for you to heal my wound. But for someone of the Southern Levista bloodline, even without training, it would be easy. That is the power brought by bloodline. After hearing that, Tehran asked at once, then what about the second one, affinity? Kane stood up and said that affinity could be understood as proficiency. As for the last one, and the most important one, causality, even Kane himself did not fully understand it. If you tried to use magic power directly to kill me, what would happen? Tehran said probably some light would appear over his head, and then nothing would happen. Kane placed his palm on a cup and said that this was exactly what it meant to lack causality. When the result you want has no corresponding cause, or the goal you want to achieve is too difficult, this kind of thing happens. These explanations made Tehran understand many things at once, and he told Kane that he thought he roughly understood what causality was. If Tehran wanted to kill Kane, then rather than spending magic power to wish for death, it would be better to provide a concrete cause, such as burning Kane to death with fire. Kane could not help praising him. To learn causality this quickly, such talent was well suited to becoming a scholar. Then Tehran asked, if he could control ordinary animals freely, what conditions would be needed to control magical beasts? And so, they kept discussing and reasoning things through. Tehran had never expected learning magic to be so difficult. An outstanding wizard not only had to know how to use magic power, but also had to understand the principles behind it, and know when to use it and how to use it. Remembering something, Tehran asked Kane again, did the Zahar bloodline also have special magic? Kane did not hesitate, and directly said that it specialized in stealth and tracking. Then told Tehran to try it right away. Tehran closed his eyes and imagined inwardly, as if suppressing even his breathing, not being seen, making no sound, and leaving no detectable scent. In the next second, Tehran's figure began to fade, and vanished from before Kane's eyes on the spot. Kane spoke to confirm it. You succeeded. I can't see you now. After a while, Tehran's figure gradually reappeared. Kane could not help murmuring, this ability is still just as dreaded. During the war, it was what Albion knights feared most. It is indeed powerful, but remember, it is not invincible. Now, I will teach you some ways to train your magic. Tehran, however, asked him, why are you teaching so much to a wizard from an enemy family? Kane said it was because Tehran had saved his life and treated his wounds. Most importantly, Kane trusted Tehran's character. Not long after, when the village chief learned that Tehran was going to sell off his flock and leave the village, he was stunned. He questioned Tehran. Why had he made such a decision on his own without discussing it with them? If Tehran left, who would herd the sheep in the future? Tehran replied directly, they could just find another shepherd themselves. What did it have to do with the village if he was dealing with his own property? In any case, I will only accept a fair price. If you refuse to buy, then I will release all the sheep and leave. You can go catch them yourselves, but I guarantee that it will be a lot of trouble. The village chief knew very well that Tehran was the sort of person who always did exactly what he said. If he truly enraged him, the village would gain nothing from it. So in the end he still took out the money. After everything was settled, Tehran prepared to leave this place together with Kane. On the road, Tehran asked Kane, don't those villagers still owe you payment? If you want, I can go get it back for you. But Kane said that he had not planned to take any payment in the first place, not to mention that the one who killed the magical beast had not been him, but Tehran. We'll part here. Sorry, but I refuse to travel with you. I'm more used to going alone. Looking at him, Tehran said, it's all right. I should be the one thanking you for your guidance instead. Kane smiled warmly and told Tehran to take care on the journey. Tehran also told him to take care, and said he hoped they would meet again someday. And so, the boy kept watching Kane's departing figure as he went farther and farther away. Only much later did he understand why he had respected the old knight so deeply. Even though his mother had never failed to give him love, deep in the boy's heart, he had still longed for someone who could appear like a father. A few days after parting with Kane, Tehran, traveling alone, entered a desolate wasteland. The air was full of fine sand, and his field of vision was being swallowed away bit by bit. At that moment, Tehran saw a group of peddlers traveling from village to village, so he decided to go over and ask for directions. He walked up and asked directly, how do I get to the nearest city? The old man at the front told him, if he kept following the road they had come from, he would reach a city called Murray. After memorizing the direction, Tehran thanked him. But before he had even taken 2 steps away, the group called out to stop him. "You think you can just leave after asking for directions? Don't you plan to give us something in return?" As soon as those words fell, several of them drew their swords at the same time, forcing Tehran to put down the bulging pack on his back. Tehran frowned. "Are you robbing me?" The leader sneered. "Robbing you? Yes. This is the wasteland. Nobody cares if a few people die here. We're still willing to talk nicely for now, so take off the bag. Don't force us to kill you first and strip it off afterward. That would be more troublesome and bloodier." Tehran's eyes instantly turned cold. He remembered the magical principles Cain had taught him, and instead showed a faint smile. "You want to use me for practice?" Those words brought out a burst of laughter. "Listen to this lunatic. He really thinks he's some wizard." Tehran raised his palm, and the moment he uttered the word wind, several bodies were lifted straight into the air. Tehran thought to himself, Cain was right, giving magic a clear cause could greatly reduce consumption. With just a little magic power, he could create such powerful wind pressure. He then uncorked his water skin and drew the water out with magic, forcibly enlarging, compressing, and solidifying it into a mass. In the next second, several ice spikes formed around Tehran. The bandits' faces turned pale with terror when they saw this. But before they could even flee, the ice spikes had already pierced their bodies. Just as Tehran was about to keep attacking, the bandit leader hurriedly begged for mercy, saying they had not known Tehran was a wizard and pleading for him to spare their lives. But before he had even finished speaking, one of his accomplices, clutching a weapon, launched a sneak attack on Tehran from the side. Tehran lightly raised his right foot, then stomped down hard, and several earthen spikes shot up instantly from the ground, piercing straight through their bodies. The bandit leader stared in utter shock. How was this possible? And just like that, it was over? Tehran told him he had a question to ask. Because of the one-sided crushing defeat he had just witnessed, the bandit leader no longer had any will to resist. He simply dropped to his knees and said he would answer anything. "Why did you attack me for no reason at all? Did it never occur to you that someone traveling alone might also be a wizard like me?" The bandit leader answered at once, because Tehran had lowered his head. They had treated him so rudely, yet he had lowered his head to thank them, so they had assumed he was just an ordinary person. After hearing that, Tehran thanked him as well, because it had taught him something very important. A glimmer of hope lit up in the bandit leader's eyes. "Then can you let me go?" But before he could finish speaking, he saw water droplets rapidly gathering above his head. Tehran did this because Cain had once warned him. Once he set out on his journey, he would encounter all kinds of people. But when it came to vermin like bandits, he must never go soft. If he let one go today, then tomorrow 10, or even 100, good people might die because of them. So Tehran did not hesitate and killed him directly. After that, he continued onward along the tracks left by the wagon. The boy's heart was in chaos at that moment, because he had killed people. He felt guilty, but he could not let those people go. Cain's warning kept echoing in his mind. A swarm of vermin willing to rob and kill for profit could turn their blades on the next passerby at any moment. The wagon tracks stretched across the sand, then were slowly swallowed by weeds. As Tehran recalled Cain's teachings, the turmoil in his heart gradually calmed. Then, he stepped into a brand new world. Tehran was stunned. So the Murray the bandit leader had spoken of was actually the city before his eyes. He looked around curiously. This was the first time he had seen so many people gathered in one place. And the buildings here were nothing like the ones in the village. The unfamiliar surroundings left Tehran unsure where to go next for a moment. Soon he remembered Cain's words. If you want to rest in an unfamiliar place, look for an inn. Whether in a village or a city, there would always be one. So Tehran turned and asked the fruit vendor at the nearby stall. At first, the vendor politely asked what he wanted to buy. But the moment he heard that Tehran was only asking for directions, his attitude changed at once and he told him not to block the stall if he was not buying anything. Tehran did not understand it at all. Why be so rude? Did the city have a rule that you had to buy fruit before asking a question? So Tehran pointed at an apple nearby and asked, "How much is this?" Only when he saw Tehran take out coins did the vendor's tone soften. "You look like an outsider. What do you want to ask?" Tehran placed a silver coin in his hand and asked where he could find an inn. The man said to go straight along the road behind the cloak shop, then turn left, and he would see a building with a blue roof, which was the largest inn in the city. Tehran entered the inn and met one of the staff there, Lena, who welcomed him with a smile. Tehran asked how much it cost to stay one night. Lena clasped her hands together and said brightly, 16 dublins. After confirming the price, Tehran paid. Then he asked her whether there were any monster bounties nearby. He asked this because he needed to hunt monsters and absorb magic power, and Cain had also told him that taking bounties not only made one stronger, but also earned money. Seeing Lena remain silent, Tehran asked again. But Lena calmly said, "Sir, there is nothing in this world for free." Tehran immediately handed her a few more coins. Only then did Lena tell him, if he wanted to take bounties, he should go to City Hall. That place handled all kinds of public affairs, and the staff there were all employed by the city lord. But the sun has already set, so it's probably closed by now. If you want to take monster bounties, go tomorrow. Lena then asked curiously, are you a monster hunter too? But Taran had no idea what monster hunter meant. So Lena explained, some people say that ordinary people can become wizards as long as they kill monsters. Are you trying to become a wizard too? Though most of that is probably just a lie. At that moment, a hand rested on Taran's shoulder. A man spoke. The rumor was not false. Becoming a wizard by killing monsters was absolutely real, and he had seen it with his own eyes. Lena looked at him in surprise. Midden, you're actually still alive? Midden answered, didn't I say so? Until I become a wizard, I won't die. Taran brushed his hand aside and asked directly, if an ordinary person kills a monster, can he really become a wizard? Midden told him, for a wizard to grow stronger, he had to kill monsters. Likewise, if ordinary people killed monsters, they too could become wizards. And the four of them were hunting monsters for exactly that reason, to become powerful wizards. Taran pressed further, had anyone succeeded yet? Midden scoffed. How could that be possible? In this city, only the lord and his 3 subordinates were wizards. And besides, you say you want to hunt monsters? With equipment like that on you? That's way too shabby. Taran did not argue, because what the man said was indeed true. The only weapon he had that looked halfway decent was a slingshot, and at most it could only hit something about the size of an egg. Even so, Midden still invited him, saying their team was short one shooter. If Taran was willing, he could go hunting with them. But Taran refused directly, because he had no reason at all to have to go with them. After lying down on the bed, Taran thought back on the day's experiences. The outside world really was chaotic. Even now, he still could not quite believe that he had already left the village. And perhaps because of that, he felt even more curious about what would come next. Just then, he heard a knock outside the door. Taran sat up on the bed and asked, who is it? Before parting, Cain had reminded him that even while staying at an inn, he must never let down his guard. A city was not absolutely safe either. So Cain had repeatedly warned Taran to act carefully. Not daring to be careless, Taran secretly gathered magic power in his left hand and reached for the door with his right. The moment the door opened, he saw that the person outside was actually Lena from earlier that day. Lena asked whether he had gone to sleep yet, saying that she was worried the room was cold and wanted to come help him warm himself up. Taran frowned and asked what she meant by that. Lena said directly that she meant exactly what she said. As long as he paid a little extra, she was willing to do anything. But Taran said, what if he did not want anything at all? Lena did not believe him, telling him not to pretend. She could tell just by looking at his face. But when she looked up and met Taran's eyes, she found him calm and rigid, as steady as stone. She froze on the spot. This too had been one of Cain's warnings. When dealing with women like those in inns, one had to remain cautious at all times. Because many people carried diseases. A wizard's body was strong, so he might not suffer much himself. But once infected, if he then went to another girl, he would end up harming others. So Cain had repeatedly reminded Taran, do not let desire drive you into doing something you would regret. This made Taran feel that surviving in a big city really was not easy. Whether it was the fruit stall or Lena, everyone was like this. Even a single sentence, even a piece of information, had to be priced first. The rules here were as cold as iron. Taran keenly heard voices coming from the stairway. Someone asked Midden, boss, why did you want to bring that kid along earlier? Honestly, he doesn't look like he'd be of any help. Another person chimed in, that guy's pretty arrogant too. We'd be better off using him as bait for monsters. But Midden said, he reminds me of myself when I was young. I heard he wants to hunt monsters with that kind of weapon, so I'm a little worried. There's not much I can do, but at the very least, let him live a little longer. Hearing those words from the bed, something stirred in Taran's heart. Perhaps this city was not made up only of cold and ruthless people. The next day, following the directions Lena had given him, Taran arrived at City Hall. The clerk responsible for registration looked up as he approached and asked, what do you need? Taran stated his purpose directly. He wanted to hunt monsters and take on a bounty. In truth, Cain had already warned him. This world would not show kindness to anyone for no reason, nor did it need to. If you wanted people to treat you well, show them that you were a wizard. Ordinary people would naturally bow their heads. When the city hall worker handed the bounty notice to Taran, he casually added, your life matters more than anything. Just take a look, bring it back after you're done. Even though Taran read it very carefully, the worker still did not think he could really kill a monster, but he still reminded him, if he truly did kill it, then he had to bring the corpse back to the city. Because if a wizard did not disperse the remaining magic power, the corpse would become a wraith. According to city law, killing a monster and then leaving the corpse outside without dealing with it would be punished by execution under the highest penalty. Actually, even without being told, Taran understood how terrifying wraiths were. There was no way he would make the same mistake again. Still, Tehran asked in confusion, weren't knights supposed to hunt monsters? The man gave a helpless sneer. Do you think knights have nothing better to do? Knights have to maintain order inside the city. As for those monsters outside the city, that's for bastards like you to deal with. Watching Tehran's figure slowly walk away, he muttered under his breath, he's gone? Looks like there'll be another corpse outside the city. Not long afterward, Tehran brought the monster from the bounty straight back. The worker looked utterly incredulous. Impossible, how could this happen? How did you bring it back so quickly? Did you really kill this by yourself? Tehran nodded calmly, then asked how he was supposed to collect the reward. Another clerk immediately ran to the counter, took out the reward money for the three-legged crow, and stuffed it into Tehran's hand. But even after paying him, they still stared at the nearly intact monster corpse, their eyes full of disbelief. When they saw that Tehran had not left, they instead wondered why he was still standing there. So Tehran asked whether there were any other monster bounties. They stared at him in shock. You still want to keep hunting? A few days later, Lena was so excited she seemed like a different person, laying out a whole feast for Tehran. She could never have imagined that someone like Tehran could kill 30 monsters in just 3 days. You must have made a lot of money, right? But Tehran said money was not his only goal. More precisely, what he wanted was the monster's magic power, and because of that magic power, he had grown stronger. Compared with when he first met Cain, his magic power had surged several times over. Tehran looked at his own palm, and he knew very clearly that he had reached a critical point. If he kept farming those weak monsters, it would probably be hard for him to grow any stronger. At that moment, Lena's cheeks flushed red, as if she wanted to say something to Tehran. But when she looked up, she realized that almost all the food on the table had already been eaten by him. Tehran looked lean, but his appetite was astonishingly large, and even the cook was pleased to be feeding him. It had been a long time since he had made so many dishes. Just as Tehran had finished eating and was about to return to his room, a large hand suddenly grabbed the back of his collar. The man lowered his head and stared at Tehran. Eating that fast? I hear you've made a lot lately. How about taking it out and sharing it with everyone? Before he had even finished speaking, Tehran raised his hand and struck him across the face with a chop of his palm. The man screamed on the spot. Tehran stared at them. Didn't you want money? Then come and take it. Another man swung a fist at Tehran and cursed him for getting carried away. Tehran twisted aside to dodge it, then answered with a heavy punch that drove the man backward. The first man was completely enraged and grabbed a stool, about to smash Tehran flat with it. But before the stool could come down, Tehran reached out and blocked it firmly. Then Tehran made a flicking motion with his left hand, and with a single flick to the forehead, he sent both the stool and the man flying away together. At that very moment, Lena shrieked, "No fighting in the inn." The arriving Midden immediately apologized to Tehran. I've already taught those two a harsh lesson. I guarantee it won't happen again. We've really been short on money lately. When they saw you, they probably got jealous. After saying that, Midden told the two men to come over and apologize. Tehran asked him, was the situation really that bad? Midden said they were only short of money for the moment, but in another 3 days, they might not even be able to afford the inn fees. After hearing that, Tehran almost did not hesitate at all and directly took out a bag of coins and handed it to Midden. Midden was stunned and asked why Tehran was doing this. Tehran explained, this was to repay his earlier kindness. At the time, Midden had said he was worried about Tehran's safety and wanted to take him along. He was just about to ask how Tehran knew that, but Tehran cut him off. There is nothing free in this world. If you take the money, then give me information. Midden nodded at once and said that gathering information was exactly his specialty, and that he would tell Tehran everything he knew. A few more days passed. Tehran planned to leave Murray after this hunt was over, because Midden had given him information about the next city. It was about time for Tehran to set out, and that information was even more valuable than Tehran had expected. In the end, Midden really was a good man. Though not as seasoned as Cain, he was purer for that very reason, and more willing to show his kindness openly. Just then, Tehran suddenly caught a scent that felt wrong. His heart sank, and he could only pray that he was overthinking it. When Tehran arrived at a tree marked with monster claw traces, he immediately swept his gaze around in vigilance. In the next second, he saw a bloodied, mangled person leaning against the trunk. Tehran frowned. Wasn't this one of Midden's companions? At that moment, he understood. His earlier worry had already come true. Looking at the corpse, which had clearly been dead for quite some time, Tehran said in a low voice, "What exactly happened here? Where is Midden?" From behind another tree trunk, a man spoke in a trembling voice. "A rabbit, it was a rabbit." Tehran immediately saw the monster rabbit in the distance gnawing on a corpse. The monster rabbit was covered in stiff, goat-like fur, and sharp fangs had grown from its ears and limbs. Tehran instantly raised his guard. In the next second, the monster rabbit charged straight at Tehran, and Tehran immediately dodged aside. Still in midair, Tehran was startled inwardly. that speed is insane. I almost got hit just now. Once his feet landed firmly, Turan snapped out his shepherd's whip. He pulled his left foot back and assumed a stance to gather force, then raised his hand and cracked the whip through the air. Several stones instantly shot toward the rabbit, but with a few quick swipes, the monster rabbit shattered all the stones. Turan's heart sank. Not only was it fast, its blocking was this strong too. It planted its feet and gathered force, then lunged at Turan once again. What it did not expect, however, was that Turan vanished from the spot on the spot. Just as the monster rabbit came to a sudden stop, Turan suddenly appeared behind it, a short blade flashed, and stabbed straight into its neck. Then Turan quickly retreated, using the momentum to pull back. At the very instant Turan vanished again, the monster rabbit abruptly appeared where Turan had just been, its claws sweeping across and tearing a tree trunk clean in half. Like something gone mad, it repeated the same pounce and rend attack over and over. The originally dense forest was torn open into a clearing within just a few breaths. Yet it still could not find any trace of Turan, and it threw back its head with a roar, when the severe wound in its neck finally caused it to bleed without stopping, and it ultimately collapsed, convulsed, and could no longer get up. Only then did Turan's figure slowly appear in the distance. He walked closer and observed it carefully for a moment, then extended his palm toward the corpse and fixed a single thought in his mind. Energy instantly rose from above the corpse and poured into Turan's palm. This magic power was completely different from anything he had absorbed before. It was even far greater than that of the leopard he had first encountered. At that moment, a voice sounded by Turan's ear. "I can't believe it, you're actually a wizard. Then why were you hiding your identity?" Turan did not explain, and only asked with a trace of regret, "Of the four of you, is there anyone who needs me to take their belongings back to their family?" The man only had time to say no before breathing his last. Looking at Midden's corpse before him, Turan remembered Midden once telling him that there was a great city nearby called Orem, and that it had a library. It was said to hold tens of thousands of books, but that was not a place just anyone could enter. Only wizards were allowed inside. At the time, Turan had still been hesitating over whether he should go and see it. Now, he no longer hesitated. He was going to the great capital Midden had spoken of, Orem. That big man who had once been willing to show kindness even to a stranger had died here just like that, and Turan felt an indescribable regret in his heart. I hope that over there, he can be happy. Having arrived in a new place, Turan stood in line to enter the city. Once, Turan had thought that a small city like Murray was already astonishing enough, but now, the city before him left him utterly speechless. This was the great capital, Orem. Here, one had to queue even to enter the city, and the crowd was overwhelming. He looked toward the guards at the gate, who were checking wanted posters one by one. Turan's heart sank. As expected of the great capital, even its rules felt suffocating. But when it was finally Turan's turn, the guard raised a hand and stopped him. Frowning, the guard said he had never seen clothes this filthy, and told Turan to clean himself up before entering the city. After quite a while, Turan finally entered Orem, and also found the library Midden had mentioned. The magnificent building before him made Turan instinctively wonder, was this thing built with magic? He saw the guard at the main entrance, so he went up and explained that he wanted to go inside, but the guard coldly replied that this was a library only wizards could enter. Turan immediately explained that he himself was a wizard. But the guard did not believe him at all, and sternly demanded, "How could someone like you possibly be a wizard? If you dare impersonate a wizard, I absolutely won't let you off." As soon as the words fell, a mass of red magic power rose in his palm. Turan merely lifted his gaze, and an even stronger pressure spread directly from his body. The guard's face turned deathly pale in an instant, and in the next second he collapsed to the ground, while another guard beside him hurriedly asked what was wrong. Only then did that guard realize that the person before him was no ordinary wizard. This was noble level, perhaps even higher. Terrified, he got to his feet and immediately bowed respectfully. "I am a knight of the Kenuada's family. May I ask which family your excellency comes from?" Turan asked in return, "If I don't state my family, am I not allowed in?" The other man hurriedly said that was unnecessary, but to use the library, he still needed permission from the master of Voltas. But what Turan had not expected was this. What had sounded like a simple process when called permission, turned out, in practice, to be far beyond anything he had imagined. Unused to being attended to, he could not help turning to them and saying, "You can stop now. I can wash myself." The maids, however, trembled in fear and said that if they failed to serve him properly, they would be severely punished. Turan could only nod awkwardly in agreement. Before long, the maids who had been attending him revealed stunned expressions. Turan asked them, "Is there something on my face?" They hurriedly explained, "It is because Milord is too handsome. We lost ourselves for a moment. Please forgive us." Turan did not put on airs, and immediately told them not to mind it. Just then, a door in the distance opened, and two figures walked toward Turan. The petite girl in front looked him up and down and said, "So you're the guest who looked like a beggar? Now that you've cleaned up, you really do look a bit like a prince." Taran introduced himself first. Hearing that, the other party gave her own name as well, Angela. Angela then asked which family Taran came from, but Taran said that for personal reasons, it was inconvenient for him to reveal it. A trace of regret flashed through her eyes, and she thought, so he was hiding his identity? Then she might as well make a little joke of it. In the next second, a powerful surge of magic power burst from her body. She simply wanted to test just how deep Taran's magic power really ran. But almost in that very instant, an equally matched force rose from around Taran as well. Angela's guard immediately stepped in front of the maids, as though facing a great enemy. When both auras withdrew at the same time, Taran let out a helpless sigh. But Angela let out a short cry of surprise. She could hardly believe it, even after a long moment. Her hand was still trembling. Angela then smiled and stared at Taran as she asked, "Will you marry me?" Taran froze on the spot. With blatant mischief in her expression, Angela added, "Just kidding. Why are you making that face?" The guard beside her looked deeply helpless. But she still tossed out one more line, telling Taran to seriously consider it, since the place beside her was still empty. After saying that, she turned and left. As her figure went farther and farther away, Taran slowly lowered his eyes. His hand, too, was trembling slightly. So Angela's magic power really was on par with his, but whether that was normal or not, he had no answer. Not long afterward, Taran was led to meet the Lord of Aurum, Rug Voltos. Rug clearly already knew why he had come, and first only asked his name. After Taran briefly introduced himself, Rug bluntly declared, "Lately, many people have heard strange rumors and rushed to Aurum all at once. But the truth is, there are no ancient forbidden arts in the library, nor any secret that can make your magic power surge." Taran said he did not mind. Seeing how calm his attitude was, Rug nodded in agreement. However, Rug said it was too late today, so Taran should rest first and enter the library tomorrow. The next day, the two guards responsible for protecting the library respectfully invited Taran inside. As the great doors slowly opened, the moment Taran raised his eyes, he saw the most breathtaking sight of his life. At the center of the tower-like library, a staircase spiraled upward in winding turns, as if it had no end. It passed through layer after layer of bookshelves, beyond piles of tomes stacked like mountains, all the way to the beam of light pouring down from the dome above. Taran could not help murmuring in admiration. So this is what a library is. Just then, a voice sounded beside him. "I'm very pleased to meet you. I am the librarian here. The Lord has already informed me, and I am responsible for telling you the rules here." Taran frowned slightly. How could a little child be the librarian? She continued anyway, saying the rules were simple, only two. First, if anything is damaged, you must pay for it at full value. Second, no books may be borrowed out. So while you are in the library, I will be watching you the whole time. Seeing how serious her tone was, Taran agreed without hesitation. "But when I'm reading, could you stand a little farther away? I'll feel uncomfortable. Also, since you're the librarian, you must have read all the books here, right?" She immediately replied with confidence, "Finding books is my specialty. Whatever you want, you can ask me." "So what kind of book do you want? Romance? History? Or are you too young and looking for something erotic?" Taran was silent for a moment, then told her that he wanted to start with the most basic knowledge of the world. Not long afterward, she brought Taran a large pile of books. She said that many of these books were several hundred years old, and she was not sure whether they were the most suitable, but this batch should be of some help. Taran thanked her, then casually pulled one book from the pile. As his fingertips brushed across the rough cover, that smooth yet cool touch made Taran tremble slightly. So this is what a book is. After reading for only a short while, Taran increasingly felt that books were practically magic. After that, the boy repeated the same thing every day, quietly reading in the library. Book after book, he gradually came to understand the geography of the world, the ways different races lived, the etiquette of wizards, the making and processing of various items, and even the monsters and ruins of the old age began to grow clear. As knowledge kept piling up, the world in the boy's eyes, that place which had once been chaotic, unfamiliar, and impossible to name, was being illuminated little by little. From then on, mountains and rivers had names, races had origins, and even the wind brushing across his face seemed to carry messages that could be understood. When Lord Rug saw Taran again, he praised him, saying, "It seems you really have made full use of the library." Taran did not deny it. Rug then continued, "I allowed you into the library partly because I regarded you as a noble, and partly out of goodwill. Of course, I also hope that this goodwill will be repaid." Taran asked what he needed him to do. Rug told him that a monster had appeared north of Aurum and was attacking travelers. He had once sent 4 knights to subdue it, but without exception, all of them had been devoured by the monster. So a noble had to act personally, yet the family currently had only 2 people they could deploy. and that was the repayment Rug wanted. He asked what kind of help Tehran needed, but Tehran said he did not need any reward at all. Still, he felt that something was not quite right. Ordinarily, a noble-level wizard would not personally deal with this sort of matter. Seeing his doubt, Rug explained that Monster had blocked the northern road, and that road was Orm's most important trade route. The matter had already dragged on for 10 days, and he had to reopen it as soon as possible. Tehran immediately understood. 10 days earlier he had not even arrived in Orem yet, and this was the real reason why Rug had so readily allowed him into the library. The next day arrived, and Tehran followed the group out through the city gates. Angela, walking at the front, lazily stretched. Father really knows how to scheme. To actually drag a guest along to hunt monsters, are we really that unreliable? After saying that, she looked at Tehran and said she was not blaming him, only complaining that her father was taking things too seriously. Someone beside her wanted to remind her to watch her wording. Angela gave him a look, and he immediately fell silent. Then the man turned to Tehran and briefly introduced himself, saying his name was Marvin Valtos. Angela idly kicked at the stones by her feet, muttering that they should hurry up and finish this so they could go back and rest. Marvin, standing beside Tehran, suddenly asked whether Tehran was interested in his sister. When Tehran said no, Marvin smiled. Then I can rest easy. At that moment, the man scouting ahead came back with a report. When the group went over to look, they found a shadowed carriage. The scout guessed that the monster had likely left the wreckage there on purpose, just to stop anyone from going north. After observing it for a moment, Tehran identified the monster immediately from a handprint on the pile of wood. He turned back to the group and said, "It was a monkey." Angela looked confused, so Tehran pointed at the handprint, and continued explaining. After attacking the caravan, it went back into the forest. As long as we find its tracks and follow them, we'll locate it soon. Seeing that Angela and Marvin, the two wizards, hardly knew any tracking magic, Tehran picked up a piece of cloth from the wreckage and said that he could try. Angela immediately perked up and asked whether he had that bloodline. Tehran only said that he was simply better at tracking, and because he used it often, he had become familiar with it. After saying that, he held the cloth up before his nose. Almost instantly, Tehran caught the direction of the monster's scent trail. He raised his hand, pointed in one direction, and told the group to follow. Before long, when they reached a stream, Tehran spoke again. The monster had stopped here, and it had probably washed itself. Angela was shocked. Monsters would actually wash themselves to avoid being tracked? Tehran calmly replied, "It might also just have wanted to wash, so it did." Suddenly, Tehran whipped around and shouted sharply, "Watch out behind you." No sooner had the words fallen than a gigantic monkey bent low with a furious roar, and scooped up a huge handful of stones. The soldiers had not even had time to scatter, before the stones rained into the crowd like a storm, and in an instant 7 or 8 soldiers were killed on the spot. Tehran also moved quickly through the rain of stones, dodging at speed. When the barrage briefly subsided, he immediately looked toward Angela's side. He saw that Angela and Marvin had almost simultaneously used soldiers' bodies to block the attack, then thrown those soldiers aside like trash. That sight made Tehran feel even colder inside. His mother had been right. Angela shouted for everyone to counterattack at once. The remaining soldiers raised their weapons and charged toward the giant monkey. But before the soldiers could even reach it, the giant monkey turned and ran. Angela and Marvin immediately gave chase, but the monkey was too fast, and they simply could not catch up. Just then, Angela was suddenly startled by something flying at extreme speed. It was a small stone shot from the rear of the group. It pierced straight through the giant monkey's chest. That scene made both wizards turn around at the same time. Standing in the rear was Tehran, swinging his long whip. Seeing the cold sharpness in his eyes at that moment, Angela finally fully understood. She raised her right hand and softly uttered, "Flame." The power of fire surged from her entire body into her palm. In the blink of an eye, the flames condensed into a burning giant serpent, which lunged toward the badly wounded monkey. With a tremendous boom, the sea of fire instantly swallowed the monkey whole. Something stirred in Tehran's mind. So this is the fire demon bloodline of the Valtos family? The surrounding soldiers finally let out a breath of relief. Was it over? Angela turned to Tehran and said that when that stone had flown past them just now, it had made their skin crawl all over. Marvin provoked her from the side. "Sister, were you scared?" Angela immediately told him to shut up, saying the one who had screamed like a little girl was obviously him. The soldiers also began resting on the spot. Just now, that round of bombardment had injured them badly, and some had even had an entire arm smashed off. Looking at that miserable scene, Tehran thought, this time, they had been lucky that there had not been even greater casualties. The only ones truly dead were the two soldiers Angela and Marvin had used as shields. Thinking of that, Tehran looked at them once more. The bodies of wizards are far stronger than those of ordinary soldiers, yet they can still use the weak as shields without a second thought. Is this what Mother kept warning me about? Marvin seemed to notice his gaze and asked what was wrong. Turan only said it was nothing. Angela, however, said, "Come over here too and absorb the magic power with us." Then the three of them raised their hands toward the already charred corpse. As Turan absorbed the corpse's magic power, he also confirmed what had been written in the books. Even when several people absorbed together, the magic power left in a corpse did not decrease because of it. Before long, Angela and Marvin each reached their absorption limit. When they turned back and saw that Turan was still continuing to absorb, they immediately understood. This was why their father had insisted on bringing him into the group. That earlier precision in projectile attacks, along with a magic capacity capable of contending with Angela's. Just thinking about it was enough to make their scalps go numb. What was more, he was still a noble who had not yet reached the limit of his growth. As the sun gradually set, they too returned to Orm's domain. On the way, Marvin said to Turan, "Honestly, if not for you, we never would have beaten that monster. From tracking it to bringing it down with a stone, you carried every step of it." Turan waved it off and said it was nothing. What he truly regretted was that he had noticed too late and let that thing strike first, because Turan had not expected the monster to have tracking ability as well. That made Marvin freeze on the spot. Tracking ability? What do you mean? So Turan explained, the awakened abilities of monsters could often be inferred from their outward features. The monkey they had killed had exaggeratedly large hands and red eyes, which were completely different from its original form, so it had most likely awakened the abilities of powerful throwing, as well as long-distance sight or seeing through the forest. Marvin listened in a daze. He could not believe that Turan had thought through all of this in such a short time. Turan, however, said that he had only looked up a book about monsters in the library. That left both of them stunned. Who would ever go to a stifling place like the library? Angela had gone once herself, out of curiosity, but the books had been too obscure, and she had left before even finishing half a volume. So Turan advised them, "Next time you have the chance, ask the librarian. Maybe she can find something easier for you to read." But the term librarian made Angela look puzzled. She touched her chin and thought for a moment, then asked Turan, was there really such a person in the library? After that, Turan returned to the library once again. The moment he pushed the door open, the librarian excitedly cried, "Welcome back." Only then did Turan realize that he had been too careless before. Whether knight or commoner, no one would ever address a noble directly by name. In Orem, the only proper form of address was honored lord. And judging from the way this little thing acted, she did not resemble a normal librarian at all. So Turan asked her, "How do you know my name?" When Turan asked that, a faint smile curled at the corner of her mouth. Leaning back against the edge of the desk, she asked in return, "You only just realized now? I saw it on your permit. As long as it is within the bounds of this library, there is no blind spot in my sight." Turan stared at her and asked, "Then what should I call you?" She said she did not actually have a name, and Turan could call her whatever he liked. He could even call her something cute, like my beloved. But Turan replied flatly, "Then I'll just keep calling you librarian." She narrowed her eyes. "Why are you suddenly being so polite? It's making me a little embarrassed. Just a few days ago you were ordering me around, telling me to find this and that." Seeing her lean closer and closer, Turan immediately stepped back a few paces and said he had never done such a thing. "And don't come so close. It makes me uncomfortable. But I do have a question. Are you a wizard from the old age?" She answered Turan that from the very beginning, she had never been human, and was more like a kind of spirit. If she lodged herself in a living thing, she would become a living being. If she lodged herself in something neither living nor dead, she would become a ghost. In other words, this library was her body. And this current appearance existed only for communication. In essence, it was generated according to the user's preferences. So your preferences may be a little. Before she could finish, Turan cut her off and told her not to distort the facts. After that, Turan studied her seriously. Not long afterward, he raised his hand and reached it into her body. She froze on the spot and asked where exactly Turan had just touched, because it felt strange. Realizing what he had done, Turan immediately apologized awkwardly. But her mood darkened, and she said Turan simply could not understand how frustrating it was to be unable to touch others at all. If she could do it, she would punish every careless bastard who took books away. That line only confirmed Turan's suspicion even more. The Voltas family, and even everyone else who had ever used the library, knew nothing of her existence. She did not deny it, only saying that until now, not one of those people had possessed the qualifications to sense her. Her creator had imposed a restriction. Only those whose type completeness exceeded a certain standard could perceive her. Don't you think it is romantic? A me that only you can see. But Turan could not understand at all what she meant by type. What exactly was that supposed to mean? So she explained. It was one of the terms wizards used for bloodline. The moment he heard the word bloodline, Turan immediately pressed her. Then what exactly was his bloodline? She had been about to tell him to ask his parents, but Tehran told her that he had long since been an orphan. She licked the corner of her lips. If you allow me to examine your body, I can help you take a look. That sentence frightened Tehran so much that he stepped back 2 full paces, and his reaction instead made her reveal an eerie smile. In the next moment, she thrust her hand directly into Tehran's body. While groping around, she muttered incomprehensible words under her breath. After quite a while, she finally told Tehran. There were some fragmented traces, but the largest main part was the bloodline of the pursuer and the hunter, the very mark of the Zahar family. Right after that, she sensed another bloodline as well. So it was mixed? Tehran froze. What did she mean by mixed? She explained that it meant Tehran was descended from 2 different bloodlines, but the other bloodline had been locked, so even she could not tell what it was right now. She told Tehran that locked bloodlines were common in bloodline combinations. Once Tehran became stronger, it would naturally unlock. Her words made Tehran think of his mother. With his mother's upbringing and manners, she could never have been a commoner. She was very likely the descendant of some collateral noble branch, only with a bloodline so diluted that it could no longer sustain night-level magic power. After roughly sorting all this out, Tehran sincerely thanked her, but she said, "If you want to thank me, stay another month." After learning her true identity, Tehran no longer read alone in silence, but constantly questioned her about the things in the books. Not only did she not find him annoying, she patiently broke everything down and explained it to him point by point. During this time, Tehran discovered that what she knew far exceeded all the bookshelves here, because over the past 1,000 years, the knowledge from all the books plundered and brought into the library had been carved into her memory. To Tehran, that knowledge was priceless. She made Tehran understand that disease came from microorganisms, and rot from the devouring of bacteria. He also gradually grasped certain basic laws, such as the refraction of light, heat produced by friction, and the processes by which living things are injured and healed. After understanding these things, Tehran decided to try the beginning of decay. He lightly touched an apple before him with his fingertip, and before long, the apple rotted on its own. That sight made Tehran's skin crawl, not because he could not do it, but because he finally understood that once the principle was understood, the consumption of magic could be reduced much further. From that moment on, the world Tehran saw was completely different from before, and this in turn strengthened his abilities as a wizard. This also explained why certain powerful families monopolized knowledge. If every wizard understood these things, they would lose their advantage. Tehran's words made the librarian realize something, and she murmured softly. No wonder that as time passed, people's understanding had instead grown lower and lower. At last, Tehran told her that he had to leave, because the master of this city had been openly hinting that he should go. She immediately began crying and fussing, demanding that Tehran take her with him. Looking at her collapsed on the floor, Tehran asked her, could she really leave this place? She said she could not leave, but she wanted Tehran to stay. As long as Tehran did not go, she would take good care of him. Tehran refused her, which made her drift angrily off to one side. In the end, she reminded Tehran that there were still many divine ruins on this land, and told him to visit them from time to time. Perhaps he might encounter a spirit who knew even more than she did. Tehran pushed open the library doors and turned back to tell her that he would come back again. Without turning around, she only tossed out one line. Come if you want, and if you don't, then don't. Tehran turned and told her not to worry. There were still far too many books he had not finished reading. After that, Tehran left the vast city. According to the map he had checked in the library, the territory of the Zahar family lay in the Emerald Desert, just east of Orem, and that was Tehran's next destination. There, he intended to look for clues about his parents. But he was not in any hurry, because if those clues were going to disappear, they would already have vanished completely over the past 18 years. And if they were still there, they would not suddenly be buried just because he arrived a little later. He had no idea how long he had been walking when a sound caught Tehran's attention. It was the neigh of a horse. He pushed aside the grass and looked over, and saw a strong horse standing stubbornly in front of a person, protecting them. And facing the horse stood 2 people with purple skin and white hair. One of them said mockingly, "Damn it. For a mere beast to have this kind of strength, looks like we need to find a way in first." As he spoke, he spread his 5 fingers, and purple magic spread from his palm. That eerie magic caused the surrounding corpses to start rising at once. The moment Tehran saw this, he immediately understood. Those 2 were dark elves, and what they were using was most likely the necromancy described in the books. For a moment, Tehran hesitated over whether to intervene. He did not know whether the fallen people had provoked the dark elves first, or whether the dark elves had struck first. But in the very next second of his hesitation, one of the dark elves picked up a severed arm and stuffed it straight into his mouth to chew. The female dark elf beside him asked, "Whose hand is that?" She wanted one too, but the male dark elf refused, saying she had already taken one just now. Tehran's heart dropped. They were eating people. he immediately activated his invisibility. While the female dark elf was still complaining that human males were too hairy, a stone instantly smashed the head of the male dark elf who was in the middle of swallowing. Purple blood splattered all over the female dark elf's face. The undead beasts that had been summoned also turned into a pool of black water at that same moment. She did not hesitate, and immediately summoned those beasts controlled by necromancy again. Another stone flew in, but this time it was knocked aside by the horn of a goat-like beast. The female dark elf then commanded the beasts to charge toward the direction from which the stone had come. The bull-like beast smashed trees into pieces, but there was nothing there. She instantly realized it. Tehran had hidden himself. Her rage surged, and she activated necromancy again, summoning a fox-like beast, whether by smell or some other kind of perception. That fox-like beast immediately locked onto Tehran's hiding place. She shrieked, "So that's where you are, filthy demon." Immediately afterward, she commanded the remaining beasts to pounce on Tehran. Tehran spread both hands, and an immense power of flame instantly gathered in his palms. In the next second, the flames blasted forward. But the fire burned only the fox-like beast, while the bull-like beast still charged wildly at Tehran through the flames. Tehran could only dodge aside at once. The strength of these undead beasts far exceeded his expectations. Fortunately, he had killed one dark elf instantly at the start. Just then, a sharp pain shot through his calf, making Tehran's whole body shudder. He turned to look and found that the fox-like beast had bitten into his leg. Without hesitation, Tehran kicked it away hard. But the bull-like beast he had just dodged charged at him again. There was no time to avoid it, and Tehran was sent flying head-on. The tremendous force made him cough up blood on the spot. As he lay there gasping, the beasts had already surrounded him. The female dark elf burst into mocking laughter. "Serves you right, you dared kill one of my people. I will make you beg for life and long for death." But before she could finish, the horse protecting its master struck her body with a powerful kick. Under the horse's repeated fierce attacks, the female dark elf staggered badly and actually began calling for help. The two beasts that had been about to finish off Tehran immediately turned around and attacked the horse instead. Humiliated into a frenzy, the female dark elf viciously shouted that she would tear the horse to pieces. But just then, with a bang, a small stone pierced through her head. The body, no longer supported by its head, instantly collapsed to the ground. With the necromancy out of control, those beasts also melted into a pool of black water. Tehran's lower abdomen was still cramping, and he was breathing harshly, only barely able to support himself on one knee. The horse walked over to his side and slowly drew near. Looking at it, Tehran thanked it softly. If not for it, he would already have died just now. As night fell, the person protected by the horse finally woke up as well. But the moment he saw the scene before him clearly, he let out a startled scream. Meanwhile, Tehran, sitting across from the campfire, did not even lift his eyelids. Only after his emotions gradually settled did he hesitate and ask Tehran, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Tehran looked at him and explained calmly, "I was the one who saved you from the dark elves." At that moment, the horse also came over to him and gently pressed close. The man immediately lit up with joy, stroked the horse's mane, and called its name, Tilly. Looking at the approaching horse, Tehran also praised it. "It's clever. It knew to protect its master, and it even knew to drag you somewhere safer." After a few exchanges, Aziz gratefully told him where he came from. He was from the Burke family, and Tehran also gave his own name. Not long afterward, Tehran asked him, how had he gotten into conflict with the Dark Elves in the first place? Aziz said hoarsely that he had been traveling with his servants when that group had suddenly attacked them for no reason. He had long heard that other races were cruel, but he had never imagined they could be this cruel. At that point, tears began streaming down his face. After his emotions had stabilized a little, he apologized for losing control, saying that he had only fallen apart like this because he had lost the people most important to him. Tehran asked, "Were they your family?" He shook his head. "No, they were the knights and servants who had watched me grow up and raised me from childhood." Tehran paused slightly. This was a noble who actually cared about ordinary people. Tehran asked again, "How many dark elves attacked you?" Then he added that he had already killed 2 of them. Aziz hesitated before saying, "That should be all of them." Tehran closed his eyes and spread his senses through the surrounding area, searching carefully. Very quickly, he confirmed it. There really were no other dark elves nearby. Aziz asked Tehran in a heavy voice, "Do you have some urgent mission to attend to?" Tehran said he was simply traveling as well. Aziz did not understand. Someone as strong as you should come from a great family, shouldn't they? Why are you traveling alone? Tehran shook his head and said he was not that strong. In that battle just now, he had only managed to kill one first with a sneak attack, and then fight the other head-on afterward. He had barely won only because that red horse had helped him. After saying that, he deliberately released his magic power. Puzzled, Aziz released his own magic power as well. The moment the two forces met, Tehran realized that Aziz was actually stronger than he was. If he had not absorbed the magic power of the two dark elves just now, Tehran definitely would not have surpassed him. And Aziz was equally shocked. Someone who could take on two dark elf necromancers at once had magic power only equal to his? Could it be that his combat instincts were abnormal, or that his bloodline was too special? But what he found even harder to understand was why such a person still traveled alone. Looking at Tehran, he said, "If you don't have a destination yet, would you be willing to join our Burke family? As long as you escort me safely back to my family, I will pay both for saving my life and for this escort all at once. Our Burke family are vassals of the great Abient family of the north, and for generations we have been enchanters who craft magical items. If you agree, we will custom make a perfect magical item for you." After that, they buried the dead retainers and knights one by one. Looking at the freshly raised earth over the graves, Aziz said softly, "It's finally over." If he could, he would have wanted to send them back to their respective hometowns, but he could not. He turned to Tehran and said seriously, "Thank you." Tehran looked puzzled, so Aziz explained, he was actually thanking Tehran for not mocking him. Even though he was a noble, he had cried over the deaths of his subordinates. His father had told him since childhood that this was pathetic, and that a true noble had to keep moving forward and stand upon sacrifice. Tehran smiled lightly. "That isn't weakness, it's compassion." Hearing that, Aziz said nothing more, and instead reached out his hand, saying that he looked forward to fighting alongside Tehran. Tehran stared at that hand for a moment. This seemed to be the first friend he had ever made. Then he reached out too and gripped it tightly, saying that he also looked forward to it. They had no idea how long they had walked when Aziz set an iron box down on the ground and asked Tehran whether he wanted to rest first or keep going. Tehran stared at the metal box and asked in confusion what it was. Aziz explained, it was a cold storage box, and inside was the food they had bought in the city. It could preserve most food for more than a week. As he spoke, he remembered something else and simply began introducing the magical items he had been carrying all along one by one. Some produced water at the press of a button, some could collect wood and build shelter, and others could sound an alarm. Even the clothes he was wearing had a self-cleaning function. After hearing all that, Tehran could only sigh in amazement. The uses of magical items really were outrageous. Patting his chest, Aziz promised that once they returned to the main house, he would definitely give Tehran an even better reward. If the family did not allow it, he would make it himself. Then he asked the question that had been weighing on his mind for a long time. He said that along the way, he had seen Tehran use an absurd number of different spells, almost too many to count. He could not help asking, "Have you spent your whole life practicing magic? Or do you have some extremely powerful bloodline ability that lets you learn any magic?" Tehran answered helplessly that most of those things were simply things he had always been able to do. As for his bloodline ability, he himself was not sure. So Tehran reminded him, had they not agreed not to dig too deeply into bloodlines and family backgrounds? Aziz immediately looked awkward and said he had only been joking, and besides, a truly invincible bloodline could not possibly exist. After apologizing, he asked curiously again, "That face of yours looks no older than 30, your actual age should be under 80, right?" Tehran told him that in less than a month, he would turn 18. Aziz was stunned on the spot. For wizards, a difference of decades doesn't mean much. "But I really can't imagine it. You aren't even 18 yet. It seems there are actually two geniuses like you in this world at the same time." "Two people?" That word made Tehran pause. Aziz explained, "The other one may not be at your level yet, or she may already have surpassed you. Her bloodline is absurdly strong. In any case, the other genius I know is my cousin." Hearing this, Tehran asked whether he could have that person make a magical item for him. Aziz immediately refused, because his cousin came from the main family, and was also the Princess of Albion, and very likely might one day become the head of the family. And unlike ordinary wizard families, the heads of great families did not lightly pass their position to their own children. Because in a great family, there could be dozens of relatives of the same generation, and among them there would always be someone stronger than the family head's child. But among this generation, Misha had been born with the highest possible talent. After awakening her magic power, she needed only 10 years to master a vast amount of combat magic, and so gained the family's full support. Now, at almost 21, her status was already nearly equal to that of a core family member. After hearing that, Tehran could not help asking, with such magic power at such a young age, had their family held a funeral? Aziz nodded and said yes. After the great-grandfather of the main family died, his magic power had been devoured by Misha, though they had also received a share. Tehran understood completely, and asked no more. This was how great houses maintained their peak strength. Pointing ahead, Aziz told Tehran that they were almost there. Following the direction, Tehran looked ahead, and saw the docking plains, the central territory of Albion. Afterward, they entered a castle, a property of the Burke family. A middle-aged woman opened her arms and greeted them with a smile. "My child, welcome home." Before the words had even finished, Aziz rushed over and hugged her, shouting, "Mother." This scene left Tehran dumbfounded. Hadn't Aziz said he was 43? Someone nearby reminded Aziz to mind his form of address, and that he should at least say mother properly. After they exchanged a few pleasantries, Aziz introduced Tehran to everyone, saying that Tehran had saved his life. Without Tehran, he would never have made it back. Aziz's mother immediately pressed him for details. That pilgrimage route should not have been so dangerous, so what exactly had happened? Only then did Aziz say that he had been attacked by dark elves. Aziz's mother's expression instantly turned cold. Those scum had dared lay hands on her child, and she immediately declared that she would gather troops and tear them to pieces. But another middle-aged man immediately advised, "Please calm down, my lady." After saying that, he turned to Tehran and asked which family he belonged to, but Tehran said it was inconvenient to say. The man paused for a moment after hearing that. Tehran added, more accurately speaking, he himself did not know which family he belonged to. "My mother was a commoner, and I don't know who my father was." Aziz was stunned on the spot and hurriedly asked Tehran, "Why didn't you tell me that before?" Tehran replied bluntly, "It's nothing to be proud of." Then Aziz's mother slowly spoke. "Then you belong to the unknown house. Since you saved my child, I, the head of the Burke family, will definitely see that you receive the reward you deserve. But arranging a room in the manor is somewhat difficult right now, so I will have you stay at the finest inn in the city." But Aziz immediately protested, asking, "Mother, shouldn't we let him stay directly in the house?" Lady Burke answered, "Ordinarily there would be no problem, but an important guest is currently staying with our family. We cannot let a stranger of unknown origin stay here. I hope you understand." Just as Aziz was about to argue further, a voice came from the doorway. "Aunt, you don't need to worry about me. The person who saved Aziz is hardly going to turn around and assassinate me." Everyone turned toward the entrance at once. There stood a girl dressed in black, with black hair and a cold expression. Seeing her, Aziz blurted out, "Misha, why did you suddenly come here?" Only then did Tehran realize that the girl before him was the princess of Albion Aziz had spoken of. But what made him even more uneasy was this: in his perception, her condition felt like that of a corpse. Aziz's mother explained, Misha had nearly been assassinated by vermin from Zahar, so she had come here to lie low for a while. Aziz was stunned. The main house had extremely tight security, so how could someone have tried to assassinate her there? Could it be? Before he could finish, Misha directly confirmed it. There is very likely an insider. There are more than just one or two people in the main house harboring ulterior motives. But I'm tired today, so I'll go rest first. Seeing this, Lady Burke instructed a maid to take Tehran to a guest room in the manor to rest. Early the next morning, Tehran opened his eyes on the bed in the guest room. After getting dressed neatly, he stepped out of the room and began observing the corridor and the layout of the manor. Just then, a voice called out to him. It was Aziz, greeting him with a smile. "You're still as early rising as ever. What are you doing in the hallway by yourself?" Tehran pointed at the light on the wall and said that it seemed quite interesting. Aziz explained that it was a lamp made with magic, and that he sometimes made them himself as well. If Tehran wanted one, he could go fetch one from the storeroom. Tehran refused, saying he was only curious. Suddenly, a bolt of golden lightning burst outside the window, and the powerful fluctuation made Tehran freeze on the spot. As he looked out the window, Aziz said, "Misha is practicing magic. She's always this diligent." Tehran asked Aziz, "Is this the magic of the Albion bloodline?" Aziz nodded. "Yes, this is the Storm bloodline." Tehran even felt a flicker of envy in his heart. That talent was like the blood of a god. He could not help wondering just how powerful the head of Albion's family must be. Aziz asked Tehran whether he wanted to go take a look. Tehran was indeed curious, but for someone of unknown origin like him, getting close seemed inappropriate no matter how he thought about it. Aziz, however, did not care at all. "What does it matter? You're not an assassin. I can vouch for you. And besides, what I really want to know is, which of you two is stronger, you or Misha?" Only then did Tehran understand. Aziz's real purpose in bringing him there was to put him and Misha side by side and compare them. Aziz revealed a rather odd smile. There were some things he had kept bottled up for years. He had long wanted to see what it would look like when Misha was finally humbled. A moment later, Aziz called out to Misha ahead of them. Seeing the two of them approaching, Misha asked, "Aziz, and who is the person beside you?" Hearing this, Tehran briefly introduced himself. Misha asked again, "Then why have the two of you come to see me now?" At that, Aziz scratched the back of his head and explained, "Misha, it looked like you were practicing magic, right? So we wanted to join in. And besides, didn't we train together before?" Aziz's words seemed to remind Misha of something. "Oh, right. Back when we trained together, I learned a spell after trying it twice, while you spent a whole week on it and then ran off in tears afterward." Before the words had even finished, Aziz first turned to look at Tehran, not having expected that even Tehran would laugh at him. Then, with a helpless expression, he said, "Anyway, among all the people I've ever met, Tehran's talent is unmatched. How about the two of you have a duel and see?" At the word duel, Misha fell silent and looked at Tehran. Then a dazzling golden magic power gathered before her, and a deep blue light burst from her eyes. At that moment, Tehran raised his head and looked toward the sky, where golden thunder began to emerge from the dark clouds. It resonated with the magic gathered before Misha, as if the lightning in the clouds itself were under her control. The moment he sensed this, Tehran's expression changed sharply in shock, and in the instant Tehran's pupils contracted, the clouds in the sky dispersed. It was as if that terrifying presence had never existed at all. Yet beads of sweat slowly ran down Tehran's face. At that moment, Tehran's entire body was drenched in sweat from the shock of that aura just now. Misha looked at Tehran and said, "There is no need for a duel. I don't think you would be my opponent anyway." Aziz stepped in front of the two of them and said, "If we're talking about raw magic power alone, I admit Tehran really can't match you. But what is truly astonishing about him is his talent for learning magic. Even you probably can't compare to him in that kind of magical talent." Hearing that, Misha said to Tehran without the slightest politeness, "Since Aziz praises your ability so highly, then let us see what you are really capable of." Knowing full well that he could not defeat her in terms of magical strength, Tehran proposed, "How about each of us demonstrates a spell the other does not know? Whoever can cast the other's spell first wins." The moment those words came out, even Aziz felt it was a very good suggestion, so he asked Misha what she thought. Seeing this, Misha naturally agreed. However, as far as she knew, Tehran did not even know what his own bloodline magic was. If she used bloodline magic, that would be unfair, so she decided to exclude bloodline magic. And she also decided to demonstrate first. Under Aziz's puzzled gaze, a fresh young sprout emerged from the flat ground. Immediately after, that sprout burst wildly out of the packed earth with unstoppable force, and in just an instant it wrapped itself around Aziz, and flung him high into the air. After doing this, Misha asked Tehran, "This is the magic of creating and controlling plants. Can you do it?" From the sky, Aziz shouted, "Let me down. I'm getting dizzy." But Misha merely told him to stay there for a while. At that moment, Tehran gave the vine ahead a simple glance, then bent down and placed his right hand on the ground. The magic that can ignite flames is, in truth, merely one way of expressing combustion. And magic that creates water is really drawing invisible moisture from the air. So growth is no different in principle from those two. Its real function is to make the seeds buried underground grow at an extreme rate. In other words, this is not creation at all. It is only urging growth. That made Misha slightly surprised. She asked Tehran, "From what you just said, it sounds as if you immediately understood the essence of the magic. Have you seen it before?" When Tehran said he had not, she let Aziz down and said, "I suppose even Aziz can be right sometimes. Then it is your turn. Let me see what exactly you can do." Misha's words made Tehran think for a moment, because he knew very clearly that if he used magic from the Zahar bloodline, it would be no different from seeking death. Then Tehran looked to one side again, as if recalling something, and stretched out his right hand toward a flower bed nearby. Before long, a rustling sound came from the flowers, and the source was a mouse, which quickly darted out from the flower bed. Seeing this, Misha said, "Only animal control? Of course not. This creature is only a material as well." The moment Tehran caught the mouse, a deep blue magic power surged beneath his eyes, then coiled around the mouse in his hand, and the mouse's entire body seemed to begin rotting. Misha fell silent at once. At that moment, Tehran said to her, "This should be enough, right?" Hearing Tehran's question, the silent Misha finally managed to utter two perfect words. With a mere crook of her finger, a mouse slowly walked to the hem of her dress. She grabbed the mouse without hesitation, then activated her powerful golden magic power. Yet even after a long while, the mouse showed no sign of rotting at all. Misha could not understand what Tehran had done. She knew very clearly that what he had done just now had definitely not been mere spellcasting. At that moment, Aziz asked Tehran, "How can you use magic like that? It's far too bizarre." Hearing this, Tehran said that he had simply thought of it on the spot. In truth, even Tehran himself had not expected that even a prestigious family like Albion knew so little in this area. This made Aziz say to Misha in a mocking tone, "Looks like the situation is not going very well. How about we just let our Tehran win directly?" But Misha immediately told him to shut up. "Do you think I can't do it?" In truth, causality was an extremely complex element in the use of magic. Whether the phenomenon one wished to trigger could naturally occur, whether the user clearly understood the magical steps behind that phenomenon, the total amount of magic consumed, and whether that amount was enough to bring about the phenomenon at all. Among these factors, the ability to perceive how magic was constructed was the key factor influencing both the success rate and the amount of magic consumed. Another way to make up for insufficient causality in magic was, in fact, simply to pour in a vast amount of magic power and compensate with sheer quantity. So Misha, not knowing the principle behind it, could only imagine making the mouse rot while it was still alive. Although the result did indeed match what she intended, the amount of magic power consumed reached an astonishing level. When Aziz saw this, he exclaimed, "It worked." Misha, having drained all her magic power, said while gasping, "I did it. I succeeded." But not long afterward, she collapsed to the ground in exhaustion. This made Aziz rush over anxiously, holding her as he asked what had happened. Tehran, however, was puzzled. Could it be because she had overused her magic? But simply exhausting one's magic should not cause unconsciousness. It seemed she was simply so utterly exhausted that she no longer had the strength to hold up her own body. Then Tehran observed her carefully. When he saw her palm, he seemed to understand something. He immediately picked her up and asked Aziz, "There shouldn't be any healing-type wizard here, right? Then bring some salt and water to her room." Misha in his arms genuinely startled Tehran, because she was so light that he could hardly tell whether he was holding a person or a small lamb. Perhaps from the very beginning, she had only been barely maintaining a body that she could not truly support. But now that last bit of magic was gone as well. A long while later, Misha finally barely woke up after exhausting both her strength and her magic power. Looking at her gradually regaining consciousness, the head of the Burke family asked with a worried expression, "Misha, what happened? Are you all right?" When Misha looked puzzled as to why she was lying in bed, the Burke family head said, "Aziz told me that you suddenly fainted while doing magical training with a guest. Is that really what happened?" Looking at Misha's silent expression, the Burke family head continued, "Could it be that that person did something to you? We have already kept him in the temple under observation." Hearing this, Misha told her, "No, it was not his fault. My collapse just now was my own mistake. My head hurts terribly right now, so please give me some time to rest." Seeing this, the Burke family head paused. "I made some soup for you. I know you do not eat because of magic, but you still need to think about your health and try to eat at least a little." When Misha remained silent, the Burke family head let out a sigh and turned to leave. But just as she was about to walk out of the room, Misha softly said thank you. Once she was alone in the room, Misha cast a light glance at the soup on the table, then reached out and picked it up, just as she lifted a spoonful of soup, and was about to bring it to her mouth. Something seemed to resurface in her mind. It was a terrifying scene, one in which her mother and younger sister kept begging her. The bowl dropped to the floor with a sharp crash. Misha's pale hands gripped the blanket tightly. Shaking, she covered her head, trying to stop herself from remembering those things. Meanwhile, in the temple of the lame goddess within the Burke family estate, a man lightly placed his hand on the hilt of his sword and told Tehran, "The doors and walls here are as solid as muscles tempered over 100 years. There is not the slightest gap in them. So don't even think of breaking through the wall and escaping." The speaker was none other than Leham Berg. Yet faced with such words, Tehran merely said simply that he understood, and that he truly had no intention of escaping. But Leham still insisted that those walls were extremely hard. Extremely hard. The seriousness on his face left Tehran unsure how to answer him. And just at that moment, Leham swung the blade he had just drawn. Tehran asked what he was doing, but Leham told him he was training. After saying that, he continued swinging the blade. First came a thrust, then a slash. These efficient movements carried no wasted motion at all, as if every step was preparing fully for the next strike. This made Tehran think to himself, so this is what a well-trained body looks like? Seeing Tehran watching him like that, Leham once again fixed him with that steadfast gaze and asked directly, "What did you see in my movements just now?" Tehran told Leham that he had only thought it looked impressive. That seemed to make Leham understand something. And while continuing to swing the blade, he said, "In truth, most nobles considered weapon skill insignificant, because attacking with magic was far easier. But that was only because their bodies were weak and pitiful, and so their will could not govern their flesh, leaving them reliant only on magic." After hearing that, Tehran calmly replied, "Unless their bloodline naturally leans toward physical strength, specializing in magic really is more practical and more efficient. But once they have truly experienced battle, they will understand that some situations cannot simply be avoided no matter how much they want to." Those words made Leham hand the blade to Tehran. He told Tehran to take it. Seeing this, Tehran asked, "I thought you were keeping me here because I was suspicious. But if you hand me a weapon just like this, is that really alright?" But Leham said it did not matter. "This is only an iron rod. What makes it a sword is the user's body. So with your current weak body, you couldn't possibly cut me." Hearing that, Tehran did not hesitate much and simply took hold of what he called an iron rod. Then, beneath Leham's steady gaze, he adopted a sword-gripping stance. Immediately, a deep blue magic power appeared all around Tehran's body. But this scene made Leham shout, "Do not pour any more magic power into the blade." Then, while adjusting Tehran's posture, he explained the principle behind it. Put your center of gravity on your front leg, raise your hand, and overcome the weight of the blade. To this, Taran respectfully said he understood. Laham praised him. Good. Repeat it 10 times like that. Do not stop breathing. Pour your breath into your muscles. In truth, your body is actually rather good. If you ever get the chance, you absolutely must make time to train it properly. Although controlling magic power is the strongest means available to wizards, the body is still the primary foundation. A body tempered through countless trials can dominate the battlefield even without magic power. So I need you to understand that difference. Just as Taran was listening to Laham and preparing to continue training, the doors of the goddess temple opened, and the one who entered was the head of the Burke family. After learning from Misha that it was not Taran's fault that she had fainted, she came here to apologize to him. But Taran did not mind, and only said that he was the one who ought to apologize. As a guest, what he had done earlier truly had been somewhat inappropriate. Yet she told Taran that Misha wished to apologize to him formally, and asked whether he had time. When he met Misha, she said that she had felt deeply sorry after hearing that he had been confined to the temple because of her, while Taran said that this had only been a necessary process, and that he was simply glad she was unharmed. After hearing that, Misha did not dwell on it any further, and instead recalled the magic from yesterday. She asked Taran whether that spell that made animals rot was some undisclosed bloodline magic, because the amount of magic required to use it was simply absurd. But Taran told her that it was not bloodline magic. In fact, as long as she understood the principle behind it, she too could use it very easily. That made her eager for Taran to teach her. She said that if Taran told her the secret behind that spell, then in exchange she would also teach him one of the secret arts of the Albion family. Seeing her like this, Taran could only agree. So Taran explained to her the exact principle behind it. Not long afterward, she understood the secret. The root of that magic was actually a spell that strengthened living organisms, except that the target being strengthened was a kind of microorganism no one could see. But because Misha did not know of the existence of microorganisms, her efficiency in using it had been so poor, even though she had succeeded in the end, that had ultimately been nothing more than a brute force method. Although Misha had to admit that she fell slightly short of Taran in magical technique, she still wanted Taran to tell Aziz that it had been a draw, because she truly did not want to see that fellow become unbearably smug after winning. Seeing Taran agree without hesitation, she then prepared to tell him the secret art she had promised in return. Immediately afterward, she picked up a comb, and gently ran it through her hair. When objects rub against each other like this, they begin to attract one another, and that is. Before Misha could finish, Taran said the very thing she had been about to describe. Static electricity. This genuinely surprised her. Had he already known? After standing there blankly for a while, she praised the secret art as quite profound, but said she had not expected Taran to have already understood the mystery behind it, and so she found herself troubled over what secret art she could possibly teach him that he did not already know. After thinking for a while, she proposed that until Taran had received sufficient compensation, he should train together with her. She made it clear that this was only to repay what she owed him, and not because she particularly needed him. Taran agreed without hesitation. Then starting tomorrow, let's meet in the garden every evening. That night at dinner, the table was filled with a lavish spread of food. The Burke family had said that although it was not much, they must make sure to eat and drink their fill. This left Aziz, sitting beside Taran, deeply puzzled. He did not understand why his mother had prepared something so extravagant. He had never seen such a display even on his own birthday. Someone who did not know better would think that the Lord of Albion himself had personally arrived. That made Taran understand that this meal was by no means an ordinary one. Aziz's mother said, "Then let us continue their earlier topic. My son once promised a powerful magical item as the price for saving his life. So, Taran, do you have any thoughts on what kind of magical item you would like?" Hearing her ask, Taran told her that he wanted an item useful for defense. Although it was easy to use magic to harm others, protecting oneself was much more difficult. So if possible, Taran wanted this magical item to have the effect of defending against sudden attacks. But those words made Aziz's mother pause. She said that although she had made similar things before, she did not currently have a ready-made one on hand. Aziz volunteered himself, but his mother rejected him directly, because she did not want the Burke family to be shamed by it. Another person nearby heard this and raised his hand to indicate that he could give it a try, saying that he had recently completed a commission from the main house, and so had some spare time at the moment. After hearing this, the Burke family head asked how he planned to do it. In response, he said that if the purpose was to defend against sudden attacks, then it would be best to make it into something that could be carried on the body at all times. So he decided to make the magical item into an ornament such as a ring, earring, or necklace, so that the defensive power within the bloodline could be triggered quickly. The only issue was that it would take a month to make. At this, the Berg family head praised him. Though deliberately showing off one's child may seem a little ridiculous, Mello truly is a highly skilled wizard. His craftsmanship is not far below mine. So in essence, this means it will be an item made over the course of a month by a wizard on the level of the head of a family whose line has produced magical items for generations. Hearing that, Tehran asked her gratefully whether this was not a little too grand. But she told Tehran that compared with her son's life, it was not grand at all. Then she told Tehran that for the next month, he was to remain with their family as a guest, and to stay here with peace of mind. Aziz praised him and said, "It seems mother likes you quite a lot. Last night before going to sleep, she also talked with me for a while, and much of it was about you. Your magical talent does not fall behind Misha's, and most importantly, you have never been lazy in your training. So mother wants to recruit you into our family. After that, she will definitely shower you generously with favors, then make you owe her, and finally introduce you to a pretty young lady. And that is one of the ways she tempts people. In fact, quite a few wizards join the Burke family in exactly that way." Aziz's words made Tehran feel that it would all be rather troublesome. But Aziz waved his hand and told Tehran not to worry about it. After all, the magical item is only a small gift meant to please you. Even if you accept it, no one will force you into marriage, because my mother is not that tasteless. Then he asked Tehran how he planned to spend the rest of the day. Tehran told him that he had promised to train with Lady Misha that evening. The moment Aziz heard it was in the evening, he immediately threw an arm around Tehran. He said that in that case, there was still plenty of time today. He told Tehran to follow him on patrol. Zavalin might not be the capital, but there were still many things here worth enjoying. When Tehran explained his own plan and said that on a day like this he wanted to stay in a corner and practice magic, Aziz grabbed Tehran by the collar and dragged him along, telling him that life was short, and he should enjoy himself while he could, friend. Not long afterward, they arrived at a casino. When he saw that Tehran had absolutely no interest in the place, Aziz began introducing one place after another to him. Just as he was enthusiastically telling Tehran about them, Tehran sharply noticed something. It was a sheet of paper posted on the wall. And the reason Tehran was drawn to that long illustrated poster was because the person drawn on it looked extremely similar to Cain. Yet the expression was completely different. After that they came to a shop where a stage play was being performed. The story took place in a place called the Demon Desert by the warriors of Albion. There was a knight named Cain there, and after enduring an unimaginably difficult battle, he repelled all invading enemies with power that seemed heaven-sent. After hearing the story, Aziz clapped happily. He asked Tehran what he thought of it. In response, Tehran praised it as truly wonderful. It really seems Cain's humility is second to none. He once told me he was just an ordinary knight. That made Tehran look forward even more to meeting him again. When they met next time, he would definitely ask whether this story was true. Early the next morning, when Tehran had just opened his eyes, he silently stared at the scene before him. Laham was there as always, with that same steadfast gaze. He was squatting stiffly by Tehran's bedside. "Did you rest well?" When Tehran looked puzzled and was about to ask why he was here, Laham told him that yesterday he had already thought Tehran's body was quite promising. So now he wanted Tehran to train with him. He said that a body did not become stronger by lying down. The only path was tempering. Knowing very well that training would gain him more than playing around, Tehran did not refuse. At that moment Aziz pushed the door open. He said there was an excellent performance today. But before he could finish speaking, he saw his uncle in the room with that same unshakable gaze. Laham told him, "We are just about to go train. You ought to exercise that weak body of yours too, so would you like to come along?" Aziz hurriedly refused. He said he had only just come back from going out and had not recovered yet. After saying that, he fled in panic. This left Tehran quite puzzled as to what exactly was wrong with him. Only when Tehran truly experienced the training Laham spoke of did you understand the reason for Aziz's panic. At that moment, Laham looked at Tehran's trembling body and said, "Can you not hear your body crying out? If you cannot even endure this much pain, then Tehran's will shall be ruled by the weakness of his body. Continue. This is the last one." By the time he finished that so-called last one, Tehran collapsed to the ground in utter exhaustion. Laham asked whether Tehran was tired, and Tehran said that he was indeed somewhat exhausted. Laham's mouth curled upward. "You should be grateful that Tehran is a wizard, so this level of training is barely enough." Tehran did not understand. Would it be different if I were not a wizard? It turned out that no matter how hard ordinary people trained their bodies, they would still weaken with the passage of time, and so they needed constant tempering just to maintain themselves. But wizards were different. The power of magic kept their bodies in an optimal state. As long as training produced results, those results would not be eroded by time. "You should be rested enough by now, shouldn't you?" Tehran nervously wanted to say that he had not rested enough yet, but Laham said that the body did not lie. "I know you have rested enough. Now begin learning to use weapons in battle." The tearing of his muscles made Tehran cry out again and again. During his days with the Burke family, Tehran's life was very full. In the mornings, he trained his physical fitness and weapons together with Leham. By evening, once he returned to the residence, he practiced magical technique over and over again with Misha. Before he knew it, 3 weeks had passed. A bolt of lightning struck just beside the center of the target. That made Tehran let out a sigh. Missed again? Seeing this, Misha said, "You're struggling even more than expected." Tehran replied helplessly that after all, he was not from Albion. Misha wanted to help Tehran, but did not know how to teach him, because for her, lightning magic simply hit its mark the moment she fired it. Just then, a voice called out to Misha. Then the source of the voice walked toward them. After giving Tehran a brief glance, the newcomer asked who Tehran was. Misha stepped in front of Tehran and said coldly to the man, "That is none of your concern. And why are you here? Had I not already informed the main house that no one was to disturb me during my rest?" Hearing that, the man told Misha that the family head was summoning her. The main reason was that dark elves had already begun rampaging across the south. They had captured 3 cities, and were now even assembling an expeditionary army. At this, Tehran's expression suddenly turned grave. It seemed they had finally appeared. This woman had never imagined, no matter what, that the truth hidden behind magic would actually be science. When Tehran told her that the corruption magic he used was in fact only accelerating a kind of microorganism invisible to the naked eye, she fell silent. She had never thought that such things could exist in the world. Just then, a member of the Albion family hurried over to report to her. The messenger said that the head of the family was asking her to return immediately, because the Dark Elves' war against humanity had already begun. At present, those creatures had already captured several cities. The family head was gathering troops and preparing to declare war on them. After hearing this news, Misha told the man that she would return soon. Hearing this, the man tactfully took his leave as well. Watching his figure disappear into the distance, Misha said helplessly that it seemed she had no choice but to go back for a while. "But it seems you still haven't paid me the price for that corruption magic from earlier, have you?" After saying this, she clasped her hands together and softly muttered a few incantations. Then she turned to Tehran and said, "Did you know? There is actually a kind of tiny electric current inside the human body." These words left Tehran utterly astonished. Seeing the expression on his face, Misha looked at him and said, "I suppose you would have no reason to know, since this is one of Albion's secret teachings. So now, let me teach you properly and use it to offset the price from before. I believe this will be of great help to you. So listen carefully. When a person sees or senses an object, a tiny electrical signal is sent to the brain. If you look with your eyes, then the signal travels from the eyes into the brain. And if you smell something, it travels to the brain through the nose. Through this current, the brain can understand sensation and send signals back through the entire body, thereby directing movement." Her words left Tehran deeply puzzled, but he knew that no matter what, there had to be some principle behind them. Just like the materials he had seen in the library before, perhaps this was one of the natural laws passed down in Albion. At that moment, Misha told Tehran, "So what do you think would happen if magic were used to accelerate this current? Why don't you try demonstrating it here and now? I'm actually quite curious just how strong your ability to learn really is." Hearing this, Tehran did not delay any longer. After slowly closing his eyes, he began using magic to sense the faint current she had described. When he carefully felt the current flowing throughout his body, he tried to pour magic into it, hoping to make it move faster. And at the very moment the magic was infused, Tehran's pupils suddenly contracted, and a force of lightning burst forth from his eyes. In that instant, the world reflected in his eyes underwent a wondrous change. Within his field of vision, the flow of the world became incomparably slow. This shocked him greatly, and he did not know what it truly meant. But in the next second, he suddenly returned to reality. Immediately afterward, an intense pain surged from the depths of Tehran's brain, causing him to instinctively clutch his head tightly. Seeing him like this, Misha told him, "It seems you've succeeded. This is the consequence of recklessly expending a huge amount of magic power. But although you'll have headaches at first and find it hard to adapt, once you get used to it, you'll be able to maintain it for quite a long time." Although Tehran knew very well that she was somewhat acting out of a desire for revenge, he still asked whether this repayment was actually more than what he had given her. At those words, her figure suddenly rose off the ground. After flying into the sky, she answered Tehran, "This is only an investment, but you really are talented. Once you've mastered stronger magic in the future, come tell me." After saying this, she sped off in a certain direction, leaving only Tehran standing there, dumbfounded. In the sky, an eagle spread its resolute wings, as if carrying some kind of omen. And beneath it, in the central city of the docking plains, Morgan City, a crowd was gathering. Among the crowd, someone shouted loudly, "Bring glory to Albion. Victory will belong to Albion in the end." This was the departure ceremony for the campaign against the Dark Elves. It looked like a triumphant parade, but in reality it concealed a deeper meaning. At that moment, Aziz, who was standing beside Turan, seemed to notice something. "It's Misha, Misha is over there." He raised his left hand, wanting to greet Misha. But his father stopped him. "Aziz, please maintain the dignity of a noble." Immediately after, a stern shout came from nearby. "The family head has arrived." At once, the people in front arranged themselves neatly together. Turan watched the scene before him with curiosity. "So the man before us is Albion's current family head. Badal Albion, I suppose." Turan asked Aziz beside him, "Why doesn't the family head look very well? Is he feeling unwell?" Hearing this, Aziz told Turan, "I heard it was an injury he suffered back when he fought the leader of the Zahar family. But that was a long time ago, so it might just be a matter of health." Just then, the family head Badal raised his right hand. Everyone instantly held their breath. Because at the very moment family head Badal raised his right hand, the clouds in the sky suddenly turned pitch black. The instant the dark clouds gathered, he spoke in a low voice, "Warriors, trust in my guidance, and heed the call of Albion." In an instant, a golden bolt of lightning emerged from the pitch-black clouds. It illuminated every expression on every face. This caused the people of Albion to roar angrily, "God of Thunder, please bless your descendants." And after feeling this power, Turan finally understood where Albion's true strength lay. No matter how poor his physical condition might be, he still stood at the pinnacle of magic. At this, Turan silently prayed in his heart that one day, he too would become such an existence. A few days later, Mello handed Turan a bracelet. He told Turan that as long as he wore this bracelet, it would slightly enhance his physical abilities. And if he poured magic into it, that enhancement would gradually increase until it ultimately reached the level of a knight. However, it also consumed magic power very heavily, so he had better not maintain its effect for too long. Mello's words made Turan sigh in admiration. This truly is a remarkably extraordinary treasure. Yet Mello said that even among great families, an item of this level was extremely rare, and it could be called an exceptionally exquisite work. At this moment, the head of the Berg family called out to Turan from the side. "Turan, have you considered officially joining our family?" Hearing this, Turan said apologetically, "Lord Family Head, thank you very much for your invitation, but I'm afraid I must respectfully decline." This answer was exactly what he had expected. Because Aziz had mentioned this matter to him before, Aziz had told him that Turan was someone burdened with an important mission and unable to remain in one place for long. But even so, he still chose to extend the invitation. Seeing this, Turan told him that he would never forget the family head's kindness, and that Aziz and the Burke family would always be his friends. This left him somewhat helpless, and he could only nod in agreement. After that, Turan walked out the door. But before he had taken more than 2 steps, he saw Laham and Aziz standing ahead of him. Laham tossed a dagger to Turan and told him to take it. "This is a magic item. Though it doesn't have any especially powerful function, it is sharp enough and durable enough." After catching the dagger, Turan slowly said, "Thank you, teacher." At this one word, teacher, the originally stern look on Laham's face immediately showed a faint smile that was almost impossible to detect. But he said nothing more, merely turned around in silence and left. Right after that, Aziz draped a black robe over Turan's shoulders. Seeing Turan's confusion, he said, "Weren't you envious of my clothes before? So I made a set for you. Not only is it hard to stain, it can also repair small tears." Aziz's words and actions deeply moved Turan. He said that Turan truly was a very good friend. What he had done was not merely because Turan had saved his life, but because during the time he had spent with Turan, he had learned many things and benefited greatly from them. So he asked Turan where he planned to go next, and Turan told him that for now, he would head east. He let out a long sigh. "Are you thinking of going to Carmine? I've been there before as well. If possible, you absolutely must not go by ship, because the waves there are truly terrible. It's said that even the wine in a cup will dance gracefully with the waves." But what Aziz did not know was that Turan's true destination was the Emerald Desert beyond that stretch of sea. That was Zahar family territory, but he could not tell Aziz any of this. After that, the two of them simply said their farewells, stepping out of the city gate and walking between the farmlands. Turan sighed inwardly that once again, it seemed he was left all alone. So now, let him run for a while. His astonishing speed left the other people in the fields utterly baffled. They only felt as though something had flashed past before their eyes. Through the farmstead, past the castle, across the mountains. At last, Turan came to a stop. Once he had steadied himself and looked carefully, he realized that he had somehow arrived before a mountain range. But at that very moment, Turan seemed to smell something. It was a pungent scent of blood, mixed with the scorched odor left behind by burning. When Turan followed the direction the smell was coming from, he saw what came into view before his eyes, a shattered village. And in the center of that abandoned village stood several poles, with charred human figures bound to them. From the eye sockets of those figures, several white worms had even crawled out. This left him extremely confused. Had this place been attacked by bandits? But even dark elves should not be doing something like this. Immediately afterward, Taran seemed to sense something. At once, he looked toward a collapsed house. After he walked into that house, Taran bent down. Stretching out both hands, he tightly grasped the handle before him, and with only a light pull, he yanked open the wooden hatch to the cellar. When Taran looked inside, he then discovered that what he had sensed just now was actually a little girl trembling in fear. The instant she saw him, she let out a panic scream. Seeing this, Taran told her to calm down. He said he was not her enemy, but merely passing by and wanting to help. This made her ask suspiciously, "Really?" Taran said, "Really. But can you tell me what exactly happened here?" This made her speak in a trembling voice, "They're all dead. It was that wizard." Before Taran could ask who exactly the wizard she mentioned was, she fainted. Only after giving her a simple examination did Taran realize that she had likely been trapped here for too long, and had fainted from complete exhaustion. Just as Taran was about to take the child somewhere safe, a bow emitting a blue glow was slowly drawn. Then a voice entered Taran's ears, "Found you." Several people had surrounded Taran in the middle. The leading woman, who was drawing an ice bow, shouted sternly, "Neil, you murderer! Was abusing those corpses still not enough for you? And now you even want to kidnap a helpless child." As soon as she finished speaking, the man standing beside her condensed a flaming spear in his hand. He warned Taran, "If you take one more step forward, I'll..." Before he could finish, Taran told them to wait a moment and said that this was just a misunderstanding. But the moment Taran's words had just left his mouth, their attack suddenly erupted and came crashing down on him. This caused the girl with the bow to shout at him, "Gil, are you an idiot? He's still holding the child." Hearing this, Gil hurriedly apologized, saying he had just been too nervous. And at that moment, the girl with the bow seemed to notice something. Not far away, Taran had raised 5 fingers. That powerful attack from earlier had actually been blocked by him with only one hand. In truth, even Taran had not expected that he would make use of the magic item created by Mello so soon. But this scene completely stunned the 4 people before him. They could not believe that Taran had blocked their magical attack by relying on physical strength alone. Looking at Taran's figure, the girl with the bow wondered in confusion what that had been just now. Was it defensive magic, or some kind of bloodline ability? While she was still wondering, Taran continued to explain, "Stop. I did not attack this village. What happened just now was only a misunderstanding. If you continue attacking me, then I will fight back." At these words, the girl with the bow stopped immediately. After briefly observing the girl lying in Taran's arms, she lowered her bow. In fact, she also felt that if Taran really were the culprit, then after burning this place down, there would have been no need for him to remain here. Besen briefly introduced herself to Taran, and Taran also told her his name. She stated that although she did not believe Taran was necessarily the real culprit, she would not so easily trust him either. Hearing this, Taran told her to wait until the child woke up and then ask her directly. He said that the child seemed to have seen the true culprit. This left her utterly incredulous. Is that true? She really saw the burnt corpse one? The burnt corpse one? This term left Taran deeply puzzled. Seeing that Taran knew nothing about it, she explained to him that the so-called burned corpse one was the mad wizard who had destroyed this place. Over the past few months, that person had been periodically attacking remote villages, tying people up, and then burning them alive. Since there had never been any survivors, they did not know the culprit's gender. Therefore, they could only call the culprit the burned corpse one. Not long afterward, the awakened girl also told everyone that the burned corpse one she had seen was a man wearing a red cloak with a beard on his face, looking like a rough woodsman. This made the 4 of them awkwardly rub their noses, and for a moment the atmosphere became extremely delicate. Bisen turned to look at Taran behind her. Then she led the others in apologizing to Taran. "I'm sorry. We were too impulsive before, and we shouldn't have pointed our weapons at you like that without knowing the full story. We're truly very sorry." Their words reminded Taran of some of Midden's previous behavior. It seemed that even among wizards, there were people who became rude out of urgency. Taran told them, "You don't need to do that. At least your concern was for the child's safety, and I can understand that. So, are you here to capture that so-called burned corpse one?" Bisen replied firmly, "Yes. We had previously detected that after this place was burned, there was still someone here, so we hurried over. We didn't expect it would cause such a misunderstanding. However, since they had now obtained information on that person, they should be able to catch him very soon. After all, among them was someone who was a born tracker." This left Taran confused by the word tracker. He asked Bisen whether that meant someone from the Zahar family. But if so, why would such a person be here? At this, Bisen hurriedly waved her hands and said that her full name was Bisen Carmine, and that she came from Avicha. The other 3 people around her were her friends and also vassals of her family. As for the tracker Asha, she was a mixed-blood descendant born from the Zahar family bloodline and their ancestors. However, this mixed bloodline was weaker in terms of inheritance. Because they were skilled in tracking magic but lacked talent in concealment, their family also referred to that branch as the primitive bloodline. After that, Bisen wanted to make a request of Turan. May I ask whether you would be willing to assist us in tracking down that burned corpse one? If you agree, we will give you all the reward obtained after capturing him. On top of that, I can even add an extra payment for you, since what I need right now is to build a reputation. Just as Turan was about to say that he did not know how strong the burned corpse one actually was, Bisen added, that person must be a wizard at the noble level. Because among the villages he attacked, some were guarded by multiple knights, yet all of those knights were ultimately killed. Multiple knights had been slain. A noble-level wizard. Wasn't this exactly the kind of opponent Turan urgently needed right now? Those magical beasts could no longer serve as his opponents. So Turan agreed to her without the slightest hesitation. After that, they brought the child to another village. Turan told the man before him that he would pay him enough money to raise the child to adulthood, asking only that he take good care of her. And a few years later, he would come back to check on her again. The words "come back to check on her" instantly startled the man, who had originally been happily accepting the money pouch. Afterward, they once again arrived before that burned and abandoned village. Then, the tracker Asha slowly closed her eyes. A moment later, her eyes suddenly snapped open, and a ghostly blue light shone from her pupils. She led the group as they searched all around for traces. Looking at the dense, overlapping footprints on the ground, and the broken tree trunks nearby, tracker Asha relied on her keen sense of smell, glancing left and right, then crouching down to examine everything carefully. Turan, standing in the back, was somewhat puzzled, so he asked what exactly she was looking for now. Hearing this, she turned back and explained, "What we first found was the footprint of an adult man. But when those tracks extended onto the main road, I smelled the scent of ash. If he didn't change into other clothes, then the ash should still be clinging to him." Her words made Turan feel that she was very professional. But then why hadn't they found the burner before? Was it because they hadn't even known the culprit's gender? Just as Turan was thinking this, tracker Asha suddenly said that she had found the guy. At Bisen's prompting, Asha quickly ran toward a certain direction ahead. The others followed behind her and pressed forward all the way. At last, they arrived before the entrance of a cave in a stone mountain. Then Bisen had Turan walk in front together with him, while the others followed behind. As soon as he said this, he gathered a ball of magical light in his hand. The magical light illuminated the dark cave, and after the group walked forward for a short while, Bisen turned and asked Asha, "Is there really someone in here?" A drop of cold sweat ran down Asha's temple, yet she still nodded firmly. "Absolutely, there is definitely someone in here." After that, their group continued deeper into the cave. No one knew how long they had walked, but eventually light appeared before their eyes. The source of that light was several torches stuck into the stone wall, and beneath those torches stood a figure wearing a red cloak. Looking at the faces of the group, the man slowly said, "Dear guests, for what reason have you come to such a remote place?" At that moment, Turan asked Asha behind him, "Is this the burner?" Asha said with absolute certainty, "Yes, it's him. This smell cannot be mistaken." Although Asha had confirmed it, Besen still asked the man, "Are you the murderer who has been capturing and burning the villagers from the nearby towns and villages?" Before his words had even finished, the rugged man suddenly spread his 5 fingers wide. In an instant, blazing flames exploded violently toward them. The powerful force instantly blasted the 3 people at the back of the group away. But this power had no effect whatsoever on Turan. Under Turan's magical barrier, Besen also slowly drew his ice bow. This made the rugged man's heart tremble violently. But before he could react, Besen instantly fired the ice arrow in his hand. The flying ice arrow drove straight into the root of the man's thigh. The man shuddered violently and dropped to his knees, but he did not surrender. He slammed one hand down in front of him, and the force from his palm split open the solid ground. Immediately afterward, 2 enormous stone arms stretched out from the crack. This left Turan full of doubt. Magic that could alter the terrain? Besides controlling flames, he actually had other abilities as well? Just as those 2 stone arms were about to smash toward Turan, he instantly dodged upward into the air. After he landed back on the ground, the rugged man's hand suddenly exerted force again. At that critical instant, Turan violently flicked out a pebble, which directly pierced through the root of the man's right arm. While he was screaming in agony from the wound to his arm, a small strand of magical lightning gathered in Turan's hand. Turan lashed out with that small strand of magical lightning like a whip, striking heavily across the man's chest and making him cry out even more painfully. His pupils had even begun to turn white. At this moment, Besen also slowly crawled out from the shattered stone statue. He saw that Turan had defeated this rugged wizard in just a few short breaths. His face filled with disbelief as he asked Turan, "How is that guy?" Turan told him to go take care of the others first and leave this side to him. After saying this, Turan took out several seeds. He scattered them beside the rugged wizard. At the instant the magic was activated, the seeds instantly grew into long vines. After Turan bound his limbs, he took out the dagger Laham had given him earlier. Then he shook the man's body, telling him to wake up. Once the man weakly made a sound. The dagger in Turan's hand was immediately pressed against his neck. Turan told him to stop struggling uselessly, and that if he dared use magic again, he would kill him immediately. In terror, the man asked who they were and how they had found this place. After once again hearing them state his identity, he fell silent. But Turan did not give him time to think, and the dagger in his hand stabbed straight into the root of his thigh, making him let out a heart-rending scream. Turan would show no mercy to a murderer like this. He told him to answer quickly. He was clearly just a wandering noble. So why had he burned the villagers of this region alive? Hearing this, he tremblingly said, it was God who told me. As long as I burn away the souls and bodies of those burdened with grave sins together, then I will be accepted by God. These words caused the others around them to reveal shocked expressions. However, the rugged wizard, blinded and deceived, remained unaware and continued speaking. God taught us a method, one that would let us obtain bloodline power just like other people. As long as I burn a few more deeply sinful people to death, I too will gain the bloodline ability to control flames. As soon as he finished speaking, Bisen questioned him, have you gone insane? You actually want to use such a method to obtain an inborn bloodline? And for such a delusional reason, you carried out such a massive slaughter. These words made Turan's thoughts grow more and more chaotic. Because he sharply recalled what Midden had said before, even ordinary people could obtain the power of wizards by killing monsters. They had already seen several wizards who had done exactly that. The words of the wizard before him gave rise to a certain speculation in Turan's mind. Could this really not be the ravings of a madman? His hand tightly gripped his right arm, and thoughts churned endlessly in his heart. He felt as though he had learned something. Perhaps this was the true secret of this world. That secret made Turan feel a chill in his heart, but his actions did not stop because of it. The blade in his hand swept across swiftly. The flame wizard's body immediately collapsed onto the ground. Turan's action caused a strong wave of nausea to rise in the stomach of one of Bisen's retainers. Seeing this, Bisen asked what was wrong with him. Cold sweat poured down his forehead as he explained that killing a bound man who had no power to resist in this way felt like slaughtering livestock. Hearing this, Bisen's expression remained indifferent, and he told him not to say such foolish things again. If not for Turan's help, they would very likely all have died at this man's hands. Yet he was actually sympathizing with him. And did he not understand how many people this bastard had killed? Letting him die like this was already an act of mercy. At this moment, Turan, having suddenly noticed something, picked up a book from the ground. Turan bent down and quietly flipped through the book. The first half of the book confirmed for Turan the identity of that man as the burner. But the content in the latter half left him deeply puzzled. Because it contained combinations of formulas he had never seen before. Could it be that these two had been told to him by that so-called god? Just then, Bisen called out to Turan. Let's go absorb it now. Afterward, they gathered around the corpse of the flame wizard and, through the pull of magic, absorbed the power he had left behind. Not long afterward, they turned in the bounty. A man dressed like a butler congratulated Bisen. I never expected that it would be Miss Bisen who captured the arsonist. It seems a new star has risen in the Carmine family. Bisen politely accepted the reward. Afterward, she told Turan that they planned to travel around while hunting monsters. Then she asked Turan about his next destination and where he planned to go. Turan said that his next plan was to head directly to Abacha. Although Bisen was somewhat surprised by his words, she did not try too hard to persuade him to stay. She only leaned closer to Turan and quietly told him to keep secret some of the things that man had said yesterday, because whether true or false, they would cause enormous chaos. After saying this, she bade farewell to Turan together with her retainers. Turan responded in kind and simply waved his hand. In truth, even if Bisen had not said anything, he would not have spoken of it, because at present there was no conclusive evidence proving the truth of that matter. Over the following days, Turan kept moving forward through the desert. As he continued onward, the surrounding air became more and more humid. This made Turan unable to resist conducting an experiment. This experiment also confirmed the suspicion in Turan's heart. As the fire element in the surroundings weakened, the consumption of magic power increased accordingly, which made casting fire magic here extremely troublesome. But on the contrary, using water magic became much easier. And that also meant that the sea was not far away anymore. Although Turan had never seen the ocean with his own eyes, he had already learned about it from books before. Even so, everything before his eyes still made him feel astonished. So this is Abacha? The scene shifted to a tavern in Abacha. Someone asked the man drinking in front of him, "Are you setting sail tomorrow?" The drinking man slammed his cup heavily onto the table. "That's right, we're going to that damned Emerald Desert again. Every time we go there, those merfolk along the way throw harpoons at us. Last time, they nearly turned the bottom of our ship into a honeycomb." The man with the mushroom haircut sitting across from the speaker asked, "Is it really that bad?" And the old man sitting beside them added, "More or less. And if your luck is bad, you might also run into those damned pirates." As soon as he heard the word pirates, the bearded man looked utterly helpless. If things went on like this, what they would be paying out in the future would not be sailors' wages, but funeral expenses. So right now, he urgently wanted to hire a highly skilled knight. At that very moment, Tehran, who had just walked into the tavern, heard these words. So Tehran stepped forward and asked the bearded man, "Are you heading for the Emerald Desert?" The bearded man did not deny it. "That's right, we're setting out tomorrow. But our ship is no luxury liner, and right now there isn't even room for more cargo. So if we take one more person aboard, it means giving up a whole barrel of fine wine. That completely goes against my principles." Tehran said nothing more to this, and merely placed his hand over the cup the man had been drinking from earlier. The bearded man had originally wanted to ask what exactly Tehran was trying to do. But before the words left his mouth, he saw that the cup he had just been drinking from had frozen solid on the spot. This filled him with shock, and he could hardly believe his eyes. How could a great knight appear in a shabby place like this? As he spoke, the others also rose to their feet one after another. Under the bearded man's puzzled gaze, Tehran told him that he wanted to board his ship bound for the Emerald Desert, and to do so as a hired hand rather than as a passenger. If pirates or merfolk attacked, he would help them repel the attackers, and that would be how he paid his fare. To this, the bearded man did not refuse outright, but instead told Tehran, "It seems you heard what we were saying just now, but our ship is really too poor. There's no point even mentioning the meager pay, and more importantly, we can't even provide a cabin fitting for a knight status." But Tehran said that he did not care about things like pay or conditions, so long as it was a ship going to the Emerald Desert. The moment these words were spoken, the bearded man stood up with a look of disbelief. "If that's the case, then welcome aboard. Come aboard, Sir Knight." At the same time, elsewhere, flames swallowed an entire village. Even the sturdy tower was burning amid the raging fire. Beneath the flames, a man was continuously fighting dark elves. But in such a situation where the enemy vastly outnumbered him, no matter how strong he was as an individual fighter, it was ultimately impossible for him to withstand attacks coming from all directions. And those ferocious dark elves had no fear of death whatsoever. If things kept developing like this, his stamina was bound to fail him. At that very moment, streaks of golden lightning emerged from the clouds. With a thunderous crash, those powerful bolts reduced all the dark elves around him to ashes. This made the man turn back in astonishment. There, Misha's figure slowly descended from the sky. After the man expressed his thanks, Misha told him to return to his unit first. The man quickly agreed, turned around, and dashed away in another direction without hesitation. At this moment, another figure slowly descended behind Misha and called out to her. This person was Kadram Albion, vice-captain of the Albion Expeditionary Force. He said to Misha, "Leave these trivial matters to the knights. You don't need to push yourself like this, because compared to them, your value is far greater." But Misha rejected his words. "I'm fine. It's nothing. But what matters most right now is how the battle is going." He told Misha that the situation was fairly good at the moment. At this rate, they would soon retake this region, though the only problem was that they still had not found those tunnels. Misha calmly told him to inform her once they were found, saying that she would go there personally. As soon as she finished speaking, she shot off into the sky. Watching that figure recede into the distance, Kadram was filled with anger. What an arrogant girl. My brother spoils her far too much. If this keeps up, sooner or later she'll become just like her mother and her younger brother. The scene shifted again, back to the ocean. A not particularly large ship was advancing toward the Emerald Desert. And at this moment, Tehran was standing leisurely on the deck of that ship. Looking at the surging sea, Tehran thought to himself that if he reached the territory of the Zahar family, how exactly was he supposed to search for clues about his parents? As for these matters, Tehran was still completely at a loss. Because he did not know his father's identity or status, he also had no idea what would happen if he rashly entered the Zahar family's domain just like this. The only clues he had in hand were a few family heirlooms and a portrait of his mother. But wanting to use only those things to search for clues about his mother and father was no different from looking for a needle in the sea. Just as Tehran's thoughts were overflowing, a hand reached out from behind him. The newcomer was the captain of the ship, namely the bearded man from before. As he placed a hand on Tehran's shoulder, he said, "Sir Knight, if you keep staring like that, I'm afraid you'll burn a hole clear into the seabed. So what exactly has you thinking so deeply?" Hearing this, Tehran answered that he was merely marveling at the vastness of the sea. After hearing this, he also nodded in agreement. Indeed, this place really is vast. But generally, people who've never ridden a ship before get seasick. So how are you feeling now? When Turan indicated that he was fine, the man put an arm around him and asked, "I heard you're also learning navigation from our bosun, and that leaves me a bit puzzled. Why would a noble knight want to learn everything from tying ropes to handling sails?" The others are also curious and excited about this. Turan smiled and said that he simply felt that mastering this knowledge would be useful to him, and that the knowledge itself was more interesting than he had imagined. Just then, a sailor shouted, "It's time to eat." This made the bearded captain clap his hands excitedly and shout along. "Since it's mealtime, everyone put down what you're doing and come eat." After Turan got a portion of food along with the others, he started chatting with the old man in front of him. During their conversation, he learned many things that had never been recorded in books. For example, gum disease, a sickness that only appeared in sailors who drifted at sea for long periods. A person who got this disease would first have bleeding gums and would slowly die in the end. But as long as they ate something sour, the condition would improve. However, because fruit was hard to preserve, these pickled vegetables had become a substitute, even though they tasted awful, like shit. Still, fortunately they had not forgotten them this time, or else they would probably have died of gum disease very early on. Suddenly, the lookout responsible for keeping watch let out a sharp shout, tearing apart the stillness of the sea. At the 2 o'clock direction ahead, a medium-sized ship was approaching. They weren't flying any sails. This immediately gave the old man who had been talking with Turan a very bad feeling. He was utterly certain that those people were definitely pirates. Thinking this, he shouted loudly, "Crewmen, grab your weapons and prepare for battle." Immediately afterward, he asked the captain what they should do now. Should they try to shake those people off? If they didn't, the enemy would catch up to them very soon. But the bearded captain did not answer his question right away. After lowering his spyglass, he turned to look at Turan. "Sir Knight, can you handle them?" Hearing this, Turan said that as long as there were no knights or nobles among them, then there would be no problem at all. The moment those words were spoken, the bearded captain immediately turned and told everyone to change the ship's heading and prepare for boarding combat. Before long, the two ships came alongside each other. And just as the old man had guessed earlier, the people standing on the opposite ship were all pirates. They shouted for everyone to surrender immediately, saying that if they did, their lives would be spared. Turan casually asked the old man beside him whether those people would really spare them if they surrendered. But the old man shook his head and said that if they did that, those bastards would cut off their legs and then throw them into the sea. Hearing this, Turan no longer hesitated. The instant he exerted force through his legs, he jumped directly onto the enemy ship. This left the pirates full of disbelief. They could not understand why Turan possessed such astonishing jumping ability. And on top of that, he actually dared to charge alone onto their ship. But at that moment, for some reason, the seawater around them began to rise. After floating to a certain height, it quickly condensed into icy spikes. In an instant, countless formed ice spikes pierced through the pirates' bodies. And only then did Turan slowly say, "Those who kill will themselves be killed. Since you are like this, there is no need for me to be polite with you." At the same moment his words fell, half the pirates on the ship had already collapsed. This sight threw the surrounding pirates into overwhelming panic. But standing behind them, a man who seemed to be one of their leaders urged them on. "Don't be afraid, you cowards. If we don't kill him today, then in the end we'll be the ones who get killed." After he said this, the other pirates no longer hesitated and all brandished their weapons as they charged at Turan. But Turan merely looked at them calmly, and the seawater on the ocean surged onto the deck like a water serpent. That seawater passed by the pirates one after another, and in Turan's hand it turned into a hard and razor-sharp ice sword. At the moment the ice sword formed, Turan struck decisively and cut down the pirate in front of him who was swinging an axe. Yet fear of death temporarily overcame their fear of the monster before them. However, even though he was outnumbered, Turan did not stop moving. At the instant the ice sword swung again, the sharp iron swords in their hands were knocked several meters away by Turan. Immediately afterward, Turan thrust out 2 strikes in a single second, directly piercing the throats of the 2 pirates before him. Then he swung again and killed a pirate wielding a spear. At the moment that man fell, Turan snatched the weapon from his hand. Then, with a violent burst of force from his palm, he drove it through another pirate. But because even 2 fists cannot defeat 4 hands, facing the overwhelming wave of enemies surging toward him, Turan had no choice but to strategically retreat a few steps. After steadying himself, he swung his right arm. The ice sword that had originally formed instantly turned into droplets of water. The moment Turan flung them out, they transformed once more into icy spikes, as if he had slashed out sword energy. Every enemy struck by that attack fell to the ground without exception. But what Turan had not expected was that one of them had actually been playing dead. Enduring the intense pain in his chest, he tightly grabbed hold of Turan from behind and then swung the sharp dagger in his hand. In only an instant, that dagger stabbed out countless times. Taking advantage of this moment, two other pirates also swung their sharp weapons and viciously stabbed toward Turan's body. But the scene before their eyes left them utterly shocked, because their attacks could not harm Turan in the slightest. At that moment, Turan's body was like that of someone who had mastered an unmatched divine art, invulnerable to blades and spears. Before they could even react, Turan swung the ice sword in his hand once more. That ice sword not only killed the pirate clinging tightly to his back, but also severed the arms and bodies of the two men before him. Even then, Turan still charged fiercely toward the pirates who remained standing. After only a few seconds of slaughter, the once ferocious pirates no longer had the slightest will to resist. Under Turan's overwhelming power, all they could do was let out one heart-rending scream after another. Before long, Turan stopped moving. But on their ship, corpses already lay everywhere, with no survivors left alive. At this moment, two long ropes hooked onto the side of that ship. When the bearded captain came aboard the pirate ship and saw everything before him, he shouted excitedly, "Sir Knight, this is utterly unbelievable. You really killed every last one of them." These words caused the sailors behind him to praise Turan's strength one after another. They felt no pity for those people Turan had killed, because that bunch of bastards had deserved to die in the first place. Looking at Turan's figure covered all over in blood, the ship's doctor asked whether he needed treatment. With a smile on his face, Turan told him not to worry, he was not injured, and all of it was the pirate's blood. A little later, the bearded captain called Turan into the captain's cabin. He told Turan that he had thoroughly searched that ship from top to bottom. As a result, he discovered that this ship was actually a merchant vessel that had disappeared in Abacha several years ago. It seemed those pirates had hijacked it, repainted it, and claimed it as their own. But then again, such despicable acts were exactly the sort of thing those scum would do. He asked Turan how he wanted to handle the ship. "Since I ended the battle alone, then ownership of this vessel should rightfully belong entirely to me." After saying that, he congratulated Turan on becoming the new captain. This made Turan ask him what he should do next, since he had never faced such a situation before. Hearing Turan's question, he then told him several possible methods. The first was that Turan could bring it back to Abacha, return it to its original owner, and then ask that owner for a reward. Of course, doing so would require spending 1 or 2 months. The second was to sell it after arriving at the Emerald Desert. However, the method he recommended more was selling it at the Northern Sea Islands along the way. Because that region was always in urgent need of ships, this vessel could be sold there for a very good price. But if he wanted to move such a large ship, he would need to assign some of his own sailors to it. After all, one person could not sail such a large ship alone. But if he needed manpower, then Turan would have to pay the corresponding cost. Seeing that Turan agreed without the slightest hesitation, he burst into laughter and said, "You really are a man who understands. In that case, as the service fee for the brothers under me, give us 10% of the profit." However, to his surprise, Turan directly proposed giving them 20% commission instead, provided that he would take full responsibility for the sale. Hearing this, he immediately gave Turan his assurance, saying that he knew quite a few people over there, so he would definitely help Turan sell it for a very good price. Just then, a sailor hurriedly pushed open the door and nervously reported to the captain that they had found a mermaid. This made the captain unable to remain seated. He quickly stood up and asked, "How did even a mermaid come to attack us?" But after catching his breath, the sailor told him, "It's not like that. We only just discovered that those pirates had actually imprisoned a mermaid beneath the deck of their ship." After hearing this report, the bearded captain, Turan, and the old man prepared to go receive this important guest. Along the way, the bearded captain told Turan that if it was a beautiful female mermaid, then she could definitely be sold for a very good price, because on land there was a large crowd of wealthy lords who were good for nothing except money and bones, and they were irresistibly fascinated by mysterious things, to the point of near madness. Before long, they arrived at the room where the merfolk was being held. The instant he stepped into the room, Turan saw the emaciated merman before him. At this, the bearded captain said regretfully, "What a pity. It's actually a male merman. Looks like we can only sell him off cheaply. Those noble lords have no interest at all in male merfolk, unless it's a member of the royal line said to be able to transform into a fish." This made the merman erupt in fury at once. "Human, you are far too insolent to talk about selling me off cheaply. I am the 47th Prince of North Astadal. Show me some respect, you lowly land dwellers." Hearing this, Turan asked the bearded captain beside him, "Is this guy really royalty?" But the bearded captain did not believe it, thinking he was probably just bluffing now. He was only saying such things because they were going to sell him. After saying that, the bearded captain looked at the skinny merman and asked, "Since you just said you're a merman prince, can you turn into a fish right now?" The merman hurriedly said that he could not, but that was because he was bound on the ground right now and away from seawater. If he could be kept in perfect condition, then he could transform immediately. Everyone knew full well that he was playing tricks and wanted to use this opportunity to escape. Turan asked the bearded captain again what should be done now. He casually mentioned that merfolk were creatures that often ate people. Hearing this, Turan immediately wanted to kill him, since he was not worth much anyway. Even though he claimed to be a merman prince, none of them were going to foolishly release him back into the sea and watch him escape. As he looked at the terrifying figure before him, with magic gathering in his hand, his whole body could not help trembling. And fear left him no room to hesitate as he immediately shouted for Turan to stop. But Turan's movements did not stop because of that. Turan's terrifying killing intent made cold sweat pour down him, and he hurriedly said, "I have never eaten a human in my life, and I've never even thought about it." Yet Turan's eyes remained cold. This made him clench his teeth. "If you spare my life, I'll tell you the location of a treasure. There are inexhaustible riches there. And it is also a legacy left behind by the Freyan's god your people worship." As the sun set, they finally arrived at the nearest island. Their ship slowly drew up by the island shore. Watching the sailors happily disembark, the bearded captain asked Turan, "Have you thought through how to handle this matter?" Turan told him that the location was not far from here, so he planned to go and see it himself. After that, Turan took the merman and got into a small boat. Following his directions, Turan rowed the boat forward. Before long, they reached their destination. Looking at the lonely little island before them, Turan asked the merman, "Is it there?" He nodded in confirmation. "That's right, it's there." After getting his reply, Turan reached his hand into the seawater. Using the seawater as a medium, Turan cast a search spell, thus probing the surrounding environment, and this allowed him to discover the various fish beneath the water. Some were huge, while others were extremely small, but most of them posed no threat to them. And there were no signs of any merfolk nearby, so it seemed he had not led Turan to a merfolk stronghold. As the seawater rolled gently, their little boat also arrived at the edge of the island. After stepping onto the island, the merman told Turan that he remembered clearly that the thing was nearby. He looked left and right, and after only a moment, he shouted that he had found it, right over here. Turan looked in the direction he indicated, and what came into view was a small lake. After they walked to the lakeside, he finally told Turan that the thing was beneath this lake. Turan said nothing to this and merely glanced at him. Then Turan tied him to a tree. This made him shout, "What are you doing? Let me go at once. Are you really afraid I'll run away? And if you die down there, won't I just starve to death here?" But Turan told him to pray that such a thing would not happen. The bottomless lake before them reflected the figures of Turan and the moon. And at that moment, Turan took a deep breath, then plunged headfirst into the lake. After steadying himself, he held his breath and swam straight downward. When he reached the bottom of the lake, Turan gradually saw everything before him more clearly. However, Turan's gaze did not linger there and simply continued swimming forward. Before long, he reached the depths of the lake, and after swimming for a while longer in the direction the merman had indicated, Turan found the so-called treasure he had spoken of. It was a gigantic serpent, tightly coiled around a stone mountain. Its enormous body seemed to have fallen into some kind of petrified state, and on top of its head, there stood a human figure. This scene left Turan deeply puzzled as to what exactly was going on before his eyes. In order to understand it, he swam toward the serpent's head. But when Turan swam close to the serpent's head, and saw the figure on it clearly, he discovered that the strange figure was actually a man whose chest had been pierced through by fangs, and whose head had not petrified the way his body had. This filled Turan with doubt. Could this really be one of the Fran's gods? Why did his body seem as though it were still alive? Just then, the object hanging at his waist drew Turan's attention. It was a golden dial with two hands set into the middle. At this time, the merman tied to the tree made no movement at all. When he saw Turan emerge from the lake, he immediately shouted and asked Turan, "Did you find it?" Turan did not deny it and directly told him that he had. At this moment, the merman underwent a visible change in Turan's eyes. In his vision, not only was some blue magic gathering in the merman's chest, but corresponding abnormalities also appeared around his ears. This situation made Turan lower his head toward the dial from earlier. So this is what it does? It lets me sense the presence of living things, as well as the flow of energy inside their bodies. Immediately afterward, Turan activated his magic and released the chains binding him. This made him stare at his own hands in utter disbelief. He had never expected that Turan would let him go so easily. He had thought Turan would sell him after obtaining this thing, but Turan told him, "Didn't I already promise before? Since you didn't deceive me, then naturally I will keep my word as well." Somewhat moved, he called Turan a kind demon, and said that if the merfolk and humans ever went to war in the future, he would tell his royal father to spare Turan's life. But Turan told him to stop talking nonsense. Watching him leap from in front of him into the lake, and then, in an instant, transform into a fish, Turan also realized that what he had said before was actually true. So this is the royal line among the merfolk? Time passed to the next morning. At this moment, waves of wailing kept coming from the ship, and the source of those cries was actually some of the sailors, who were in terrible pain and wanted the other men to hurry up and apply medicine for them. But the old man brandished a whip and roared, "Everyone, repeat after me at once. We are never late, and disobedience means death." Turan, who had just come out of his room, was very puzzled by their behavior, and he asked the man beside him what exactly was going on. The old man told Turan that the people being punished were those who had crawled back late last night. Not only had they failed to return to the ship on time, they had also caused trouble in a tavern at the harbor, so the captain had given them some warning. Hearing this, Turan said nothing more and simply watched everything in front of him quietly. At this moment, in Turan's eyes, aside from the blue light on their bodies, there was also a kind of red light appearing. Turan understood inwardly that this was because they were injured now, so he could see with his own eyes that their life force was gradually draining away. After thinking for a while, Turan continued to ask the man beside him, "Where is the captain?" He told Turan that the captain had gone to the island, saying he was looking for someone who could buy the ship. At this moment, the bearded captain was discussing business with the person opposite him. Suddenly, a figure in the distance caught his eye. This made him stand up involuntarily. Looking at Turan, he asked in confusion, "Why are you here, Turan? Let me introduce him first. This is Captain Samuel. He wants to buy the ship, and he'll pay 1,000 Zahar gold coins in a single payment." Turan did not refuse, but merely raised one request. Because for Turan, carrying that many gold coins was really inconvenient, so he wanted to ask whether the other party could provide magical tools or holy relics of equivalent value instead. This made the captain opposite him look troubled. "Something that precious can't be found here. Perhaps you could go to Komad. That is the second largest city in Zahar territory, and the rulers rooted there are the Durman family, who belong to the beast tamer bloodline. As long as you have enough money, you can definitely get a decent monster there to keep as a pet beast." These words made Turan involuntarily think of Aziz's horse from before, a beast capable of understanding human speech. It should be quite helpful on a journey, shouldn't it? After that, they set sail once again. Because of the gifts presented by the pirates earlier, the crew had more or less earned quite a few gold coins, so they all felt that this journey had truly been rather fortunate. But suddenly, the lookout urgently reported that dark clouds were gathering ahead. A storm was likely about to arrive. This report alarmed everyone on board. Even the old man from before shouted for them to furl the sails quickly and hurry the cargo into the hold. Under his repeated commands, the sailors moved swiftly, each throwing himself into his own work. But that storm was simply too powerful. It whipped up towering waves and crashed violently against the side of the ship. The tremendous impact threw a sailor who was furling the sails straight off the ship, and just as that sailor was about to fall into the sea, his body suddenly froze in place above the water, leaving him greatly bewildered. However, he was not the only figure suspended in the air, and the reason they were like this was because Turan, standing on the deck, was casting magic. After pulling up the man who had nearly fallen into the sea, Turan told them to get down at once. Then he made a simple gesture with both hands, and the ropes on the ship suddenly tightened. The cargo on the deck also flew into the hold. After doing this, Turan told them to retreat quickly. Once inside the hold, everyone shivered from the cold brought by the storm. Several of those whom Turan had just saved sincerely expressed their gratitude to him, because if not for Turan, they could never possibly still be standing here now. To this, Turan asked whether any of them were injured, and when they said no, he said that was good. At this moment, the bearded captain, who had just come over, also thanked Turan, saying that if not for what he had just done, their ship would have sunk long ago. After hearing Turan ask whether they could survive the storm, he told Turan that right now they could only trust the ship and the helmsman. But more important at the moment was the cold brought by this storm. Hearing this, Turan fell silent for a moment, then told everyone to gather around him and form a circle. This made the bearded captain want to stop Turan. "Are you planning to light a fire in this narrow wooden ship? That's far too dangerous." But Turan told him that he would make sure the fire would not spread. In only an instant, a fireball the size of a human head gathered in Turan's palm. The moment he raised his hand, the fireball scattered outward in all directions. They enveloped various parts of the ship, yet did not ignite a single object. This left everyone in the hold utterly shocked. At that moment, they recalled the glorious history humanity had once possessed. Humans ought to revere wizards, and wizards ought to rule humanity and protect it. The scene shifted, and their ship finally arrived at Komad, the largest city in the northern Enral Desert. As the ship drew near the dock and the sailors unloaded the cargo, the bearded captain gave Turan a large sum of money. It included not only the gold from Turan's earlier sale of the ship and goods, but also an additional portion as payment for his services. This was all because Turan had saved them before, which led every sailor on the ship to chip in a little for him. If Turan refused to accept it, those fellows would surely blame him. Hearing this, Tehran did not refuse too much and only told him that if fate allowed, he would definitely treat them to a proper meal someday. Just then, the sailors on the ship shouted loudly, "Sir Knight, we will definitely miss you. Thank you for everything you've done. We will not forget you." Even their captain and first mate silently prayed for Tehran. Seeing such a scene, Tehran could only nod in acknowledgement. After leaving the dock and walking into the central area of Komad, Tehran saw all kinds of figures. Their clothing was basically characterized by being loose, light, and highly covering, allowing them to fully adapt to the heat and blowing sand of this place. Some of them were even riding camels mentioned in books as mounts. However, what truly caught Tehran's attention was the figure standing in the crowd, whose entire body was covered in blue aura. After seeing his face clearly, Tehran slowly walked to his side and softly greeted him. "Excuse me, are you a knight of the Durman family?" Tehran's words made that knight's pupils contract sharply. Without the slightest hesitation, he lowered his body and said in a subdued voice that he would await Tehran's command. To this, Tehran told him that his name was Tehran, that he had come from Abacha, and that he wished to meet their family head. Not long afterward, in the Durman family estate, Tehran had already changed into another outfit they had provided. This made the person sitting before Tehran and looking at him suddenly say, "It suits you well." Cal, the head of the Durman family, briefly introduced himself and welcomed Tehran. However, after carefully examining Tehran, he revealed a meaningful expression, which left Tehran quite puzzled. Nevertheless, Tehran introduced his own background, saying that he had been born into a fallen guardian bloodline. This time he had come here to purchase a monster. Hearing Tehran's request, Cal stood up and said that he would have his daughter guide Tehran. As Cal was about to leave, Tehran suddenly asked whether the other man had seen him before. He had noticed just now that Cal seemed to hesitate for a moment while looking at him. Cal denied it. "That is not the case. I only reacted that way because you resemble someone I know." Afterward, as Cal's daughter led the way for Tehran, she slowly said, "I heard you're a fallen noble, but judging by how you look now, you seem rather wealthy, to actually come to the Durman family to buy a monster. Could it be that the guardian bloodline is especially suited to the life of a mercenary?" But Tehran did not answer her. Instead, he thought of what Cal had said earlier. Could that person who looked very much like him be his mother, or his father? Although Tehran did indeed resemble his mother somewhat, was that really enough for Cal to think of her the moment he saw him? Or was the person Cal had seen someone else, his father, whom he had never met? Just then, the girl's words snapped Tehran out of his thoughts. "We're here. Welcome to the Durman family breeding grounds." Everything before him made Tehran sigh in admiration. This place really was spacious. After briefly looking around, Tehran discovered that every room here had its own independent ecosystem. It truly was astonishing. Then Tehran asked her the price of the horse in the room before them. But the price she gave made Tehran freeze on the spot, 4,000 gold coins, more than twice all the wealth he currently possessed. Tehran had thought before that he was already fairly rich, but now it seemed he had been overthinking things. But Tehran thought to himself, was he supposed to give up on buying a monster? Yet he could hardly carry a chest full of money across the desert on his back. Just as Tehran's thoughts churned, a black eagle caught his attention, and after Tehran's eyes turned toward it, it also fixed its gaze firmly on Tehran. This made Tehran ask the girl what the price of this monster was. She told Tehran it was 1,500 gold coins. Although among monsters its price was already considered quite cheap, it would still cost all of Tehran's current savings to buy it. Thinking of this, Tehran asked the girl once again what abilities it had. The girl told Tehran that it was very intelligent and had fairly powerful flying ability, making it one of the more popular species. However, although it was intelligent, that intelligence also worked against it, to the point that it would refuse any order from someone it considered more foolish than itself. Looking at the highly spirited black eagle before him, Tehran asked unhurriedly, "Since you're so smart, then you should be able to understand what I'm saying too, right?" Although its appearance seemed a bit lacking, there was no doubt that it understood. This led the woman beside him to add, "Yes, I even wanted to teach it to read before, but it didn't seem interested in learning. What a pity. With a body like that, it has considerable strength. If only it were a little more obedient, its value would definitely be even higher." When Tehran asked the black eagle again whether it wanted something, the woman had been about to tell Tehran that asking was useless. But astonishingly, the black eagle actually stretched out its claw as if answering Tehran's question. This left the woman utterly confused for a moment as to why things had suddenly turned out this way. Seeing the black eagle's action, Tehran pointed at himself and asked, "Do you want to come with me? But I'm not anyone special, so is there some other reason? If I buy you, would you be willing to learn reading and writing with me?" The moment these words were spoken, the black eagle immediately nodded. And because of that, under the witness and contract of Cal, head of the Durman family, Tehran formed a bond with this black eagle. Seeing the black eagle submit so readily to Tehran's wishes, Cal was very surprised, but he still told Tehran to take good care of it. He had intended to turn and leave, but suddenly he thought of something. Then he slowly said, I had meant to leave the matter there. But I still can't help asking, what exactly is your connection to Talus? Talus, the name Cal blurted out left Tehran deeply confused. Seeing Tehran's expression, Cal waved his hand. Forget it. Please forget that I asked that just now. But Tehran thought to himself, did Cal think of that person named Talus whenever he saw his face? So Tehran also asked Cal something in return. Lord Family Head, do you happen to know a woman named Vij? After saying this, Tehran took out a portrait, and Vij was precisely his mother. But after seeing the portrait, a puzzled look also appeared on Cal's face. After a long silence, he told Tehran that he did not know her, because if he had really seen such a beauty, he could never possibly have forgotten. Hearing Cal say this, Tehran could only give up helplessly. Right afterward, Tehran raised his right hand, and the black eagle spread its wings. This action confused Cal greatly, and he asked Tehran what he was doing. Tehran turned and told him, since I've already paid and the transaction has been completed, then checking whether everything is in proper order is only natural, isn't it? No sooner had he finished speaking than Tehran grabbed the black eagle's claws. Just like that, it spread its wings in midair and carried Tehran up into flight. Not long later, Tehran returned once more to the Derman family estate. Upon seeing him, the girl asked, You're back. Did the flight go smoothly? After hearing Tehran's praise, she briefly introduced him to the few people beside her. This is Tehran. He came from Abacha. Upon hearing the word Abacha, one of the burly men questioned, Isn't that Albion's borderland? The girl denied his words. Don't lump our guest together with those sparrows. Hearing this, the man introduced himself to Tehran. He said that he had been born into the ancient Marin family, and that his name was Dolph. However, the moment their hands clasped, his grip suddenly tightened with force. This made Tehran think to himself, was the man showing off his strength? Seeing that Tehran did not waver in the slightest, he praised him. As expected of the guardian line, you really are tough. Just then, the woman standing beside him said boredly, Let your contest of strength end here. Where did that picky black eagle go? I came here this time precisely to see it. Hearing this, Tehran told her that it was probably flying nearby, because after practicing reading and writing all morning, it might have become a little restless. If she wanted to see it, Tehran could call it over right away. As he spoke, a black eagle appeared above the estate. At Tehran's summons, it flew into the drawing room. Seeing such a handsome and spirited eagle, the woman happily reached out to touch it. But the black eagle directly avoided her hand. This made her snap angrily. You damned bird, what exactly am I lacking that makes you treat me like this? If you followed me, wouldn't that be better than following this fallen noble? During the dinner afterward, the group talked freely. The dark elves in the west have really been causing a stir lately. I heard the Albion commander in charge of suppressing them is that frail Misha. I hope she gets assassinated this time. If that woman dies, it might not be such a bad thing. Yes, she's so thin now that she's nothing but skin and bones. She probably won't last much longer. That emaciated appearance of hers is truly too ugly to look at. I really pity the man who will have to be her husband someday. But those Albion people really are lucky. After all, they already have an heir, unlike our side. I really hope Talus can make a wise decision soon. Talus, this name made Tehran's heart tremble. This made Tehran unable to resist asking the girl, what kind of person exactly is Talus? The girl answered Tehran, Talus is the younger brother of the Zahar family head, and also currently the number 2 figure, though in practice he is basically the one leading the family now. This reminded Tehran of Cal's earlier words, when he had asked whether Tehran had some connection to Talus. Perhaps Tehran's father, whom he had never met, held even greater power than he had imagined. Several days passed, and Tehran was still pondering what Cal had said before. So the face he thinks of the moment he sees mine belongs to Talus, the second in command of the Zahar family? If Talus really was Tehran's father, then from Talus's point of view, even if Tehran had the slightest flaw, once Talus discovered him, he would probably crush Tehran as easily as an ant. In the midst of these thoughts, Tehran's gaze shifted forward. It wrote a sentence on the ground, I am a black eagle. Tula, what do you think of my handwriting? Seeing this, Tehran observed it for a moment, then corrected the wrongly written characters. Afterward, Tehran asked it, have you thought of your name yet? It told Tehran in writing, not yet. Tehran jokingly asked, not yet, is that your name? It seemed rather speechless and shook its head. Tehran then asked it to tell him why it had chosen him before. It slowly extended its claw, erased the previous writing, and then continued writing some new words on the ground. Although there were quite a few mistakes in the writing, Tehran still understood what it wanted to express. Roughly that Tehran was very good and that they were perfectly compatible. This made Tehran wonder whether this perfect compatibility was because of the mixing of the Zahar bloodline with another family's bloodline. At this moment, a burly man suddenly greeted Tehran. Hey, I'm planning to go hunting later to stretch my muscles a bit. Want to come along? When Turan refused and told him that he would be leaving today, the man asked in confusion, "Where are you going? You should at least say something. I thought we had already become quite close, but now it seems that's really rather disappointing." Seeing this, Turan thought to himself that the man was pretending to be friendly, but in the end only wanted to suppress him by force and make himself seem superior. What the man had not expected was that Turan paid him no mind at all. He then continued asking Turan that if he needed a guide, he should just say so, because he knew this region like the back of his hand. But Turan still refused his proposal, and this made him tactfully turn to leave. Even so, before departing, he still told Turan that if Turan changed his mind, he must let him know. The fact that he withdrew so easily made Turan suspicious. A little later, Turan arrived at the edge of Komad. Looking at the guard beside him, Turan told him there was no need to escort him any farther, but the man said that this was Lord Kal's order. They had to escort Turan all the way to the city wall. Seeing this, Turan did not dwell on it any further. He turned around and bought a copy of Desert Guide and Anaral's religious scriptures from a vendor not far away. After obtaining those two books, Turan began reading as he walked toward the city gate. From the Desert Guide in front of him, Turan learned that it had been compiled by a man named Briso Zahar. Although the map in it was incomplete, the information inside should still be quite useful. But suddenly, Turan sharply sensed something. Within the crowd appeared a magical aura familiar to Turan. That person was Dolph. This made Turan think of something at once. So he had set his sights on him after all. But Turan did not stop because of this and still walked out through Komad's gate. Looking at the desolate desert before him, Turan murmured softly, "If that's the case, then let's take this slowly." However, the black eagle perched on Turan's shoulder seemed to want to express something. Seeing this, Turan told it that for now, he should walk a while first. The silent night spread across the entire sky. Apart from the nightingale and the dead tree nearby, only Turan and the black eagle remained. But just at that moment, Turan stopped walking. Then he suddenly spoke toward the rear, "Dolph, you can come out now." These words left the emerging Dolph somewhat puzzled, and he asked Turan how he had known. Turan pointed at the black eagle beside him. "Why do you think I didn't let it carry me on the road, and instead walked all the way here?" Hearing this, Dolph laughed. "Young man, I simply thought that traveling and journeying alone might be somewhat dangerous for you, so I wanted to help." Before his words had even finished, Turan questioned him, "You're after my magic power, aren't you?" This made him stop short on the spot. After a long while, he revealed the expression of a predator. "Since you already knew that, why did you still choose to face me alone? I don't understand. Is this courage, or simply recklessness?" However, Turan did not answer him, and merely said to himself, "It is precisely because of nobles like you that people come to feel disgust." Hearing this, he suddenly laughed. "The way you look right now is as if you're standing above me and looking down on me. Do you really think you're stronger than I am? Even if your magic power is great, your body is extremely fragile. Perhaps you are the primordial blood of the Guardian line. The kind of new bloodline that retains only defense but has lost the ability to strengthen the body. I don't know how you managed to accumulate so much power, but for an empty shell like you, possessing it is simply a waste, so you should obediently hand it over." Hearing this, Turan replied indifferently, "So this is the reason you took me for prey? Keep flying higher." Turan released the black eagle at his side. "Your idea is not bad, but unfortunately, those who think they are the hunter may well be the true prey themselves." Seeing Turan suddenly cast an invisibility spell, Dolph bared his fangs. He thought to himself that this kind of low-level trick was nothing more than the sort of petty magic knights learned when acting as spies. This made him burst into laughter. "What do you plan to do with such low-grade magic? Run away? But this little trick won't stump me." But after he carefully sensed the surroundings, he was filled with confusion. He could not understand why he could not sense the slightest trace of Turan. Not only was there no sound, there were not even any footprints. This suddenly made him think of something. Could it be that a powerful impact smashed heavily into his back? This left him utterly bewildered. What exactly had struck him? Before he could think further, another stone suddenly hit his waist. Yet this was not the end, as another stone flew in from the side. Immediately afterward, countless stones attacked his body from all directions. This left him no room to hesitate, and he directly cast fire magic to envelop his whole body. He thought that as long as he lit up everything around him, he should be able to break the invisibility spell. As long as he could catch Turan, the outcome of this battle would be obvious. But just at that moment, several small fireballs actually floated above his head. The fireball spun violently and then shot toward him. This made him curse angrily. But his curses were of no use at all. What was coming still came, and the sky full of fireballs continued slamming into his body. Such torment filled him with both fury and alarm. He gathered all the magic power in his body into the soles of his feet. The instant his foot struck the ground, the yellow sand around him seemed to crack apart, revealing spiderweb-like traces. But these attacks still had no effect at all, and seeing this, he could only wave his fists and palms wildly. He shouted furiously for Tehran to come out. After a long while, there was still no movement at all around him. This made cold sweat pour down him. With an explosive sound, his figure shot backward in retreat, because he finally understood now that Tehran was not some fallen member of the Guardian line at all, but a direct descendant of the Zahar family. Fighting a Zahar-blooded wizard in the desert at night was nothing less than courting death. That was why, at this moment, he chose to flee without the slightest hesitation. He thought to himself that even if Tehran possessed Zahar blood, without a bodily enhancement ability like his, Tehran should absolutely be unable to catch up with him. But he had completely forgotten one thing. The Black Eagle that had formed a contract with Tehran under Cal's witness. At this moment, high in the sky, Tehran, gripping the Black Eagle's claws, looked down at him with an indifferent expression. Under an attack like that, an ordinary noble would already be dead. If you weren't carrying some kind of defensive magic item, then your physique really is quite sturdy, though it is still far inferior to the power of the Guardian bloodline. These words made him tremble in terror as he tried to beg for mercy. Faced with such a scene, Tehran did not waver in the slightest, and merely told him coldly, "You should know very well that this is something I cannot do." A powerful burst of flame suddenly erupted from Tehran's palm. Under this terrifying force, all he could do was let out unending screams of agony. Looking at Dolph, who had already been burned into blackened charcoal, Tehran thought that the man truly was tougher than he had imagined. Could this be power granted by his bloodline? Even the stone-casting spell had failed to break through his defenses. Perhaps Tehran really should develop some stronger offensive methods, such as a kind of magic capable of piercing defenses. But for now, the most important thing was to devour his power first. As Tehran slowly raised his hand, a huge amount of magic suddenly surged out of Dolph's dried-up body and gathered toward Tehran. But at that very moment, the dial hanging at Tehran's waist unexpectedly reacted as well. Like Tehran, it began absorbing Dolph's power. This miraculous sight immediately caught Tehran's attention, so he carefully observed the dial before him for a while. Unexpectedly, it also possessed the function of storing magic power. But how am I supposed to use it? Am I meant to drink it directly? No, this is an item of Freyans. I have to confirm more about it first. Afterward, with the Black Eagle carrying him, Tehran's journey was shortened by a great deal. The wide-open view allowed him to easily spot that place, the tomb where a god was buried. However, Tehran did not head there immediately, and instead first went into a tavern. After hearing of Tehran's deeds, the woman in front of him asked in confusion, "Traveling alone like this is far too reckless. Didn't you run into any bandits or monsters along the way?" But Tehran claimed that he had been lucky and had not encountered any of them. He was only somewhat curious about how one could enter the divine tomb now, since he had read in a book before that one only needed to pay to get in. Hearing Tehran say this, the first thing that came to her mind was that Tehran could actually read. "You really do seem like some rich young master, but you can't go in now. Because about a week ago, several important figures came here, and ever since then the divine tomb has been completely sealed off. Now even merchant caravans can only look at it from afar before turning back." When Tehran asked in confusion who these important figures were, she pointed upward and said that those important figures were from the Zahar family. Meanwhile, inside the divine tomb, a man with several scars carved across his forehead was anxiously shouting, "Where's Purga? Where did Purga go?" Hearing this, Purga viciously told him to stop shouting. "Damn it, I'm right here. If you keep yelling like that, those things will hear your voice." To this, the man replied nervously, "It's all your fault, Purga. If you hadn't suggested that we come here, we wouldn't have ended up like this." Purga merely glanced at him and told him, "Don't blame me. You insisted on following along yourself. But the most important thing for you right now is to shut up. Once I become family head, I'll definitely arrange a position for you." As he cursed inwardly, he recalled something from the past. His grandfather had once told him that beneath the tomb of the gods there was a hidden underground space. If he could unlock the secret there, then he could become the next family head. But he had never imagined that the underground space his grandfather spoke of would actually be an inescapable labyrinth. Because he had come here every year to search frantically and had always found nothing, he had long thought it was only a legend. But now, he had personally confirmed the truth of that legend. He thought that as long as he uncovered the secret here, becoming family head would be as easy as turning over one's hand. Perhaps the god of Zahar was ultimately still on his side. However, the monsters before him left him somewhat at a loss. But at this critical moment, a strange voice suddenly rang out. The voice made his pupils contract sharply, because although he had never heard this language before, he could clearly understand its meaning. This made him involuntarily repeat the sentence, "The night hunter has returned to the desert." Elsewhere at that same time, Tehran, walking through the marketplace, was feeling troubled, because those people had sealed off the divine tomb, and he could not just wander around here freely. If he ran into someone like Cal, someone familiar with Talus, then he would be in trouble. Just as he was thinking about whether he should hide for a while first, his gaze was caught by something not far away. He asked the owner what it was, and the man told Turan that it was called saltpeter. It was said to come only from the islands of the southern seas, and if ground into powder and eaten, it could prolong one's life. Saltpeter, that familiar name made Turan feel that he had heard it somewhere before. A moment later, he remembered. It had been mentioned in the book dropped by the corpse burner. Since he had lacked materials last time, he had given up on making it. But since even that man had been able to use this power, then it was worth trying himself. Thinking of this, Turan asked the merchant in front of him whether he knew of something called sulfur, but the man said it was the first time he had heard that name. After that, Turan asked several more merchants in succession. They told him that sulfur was something found only in volcanic regions, that people mostly used it for disinfection, and that not many sought it out. In a desolate desert like this, it was even harder to find. This made Turan touch the back of his head. If he had known, he should have searched properly in Komad. After refusing the goods the merchant was trying to sell him, Turan left the town as well. On the road, he grabbed some sand, wanting to do a simple test of its power. Looking at the stone that Turan had shattered, he thought to himself that using readily available sand pellets in place of rocks worked quite well. Not only could he change their shape during flight to increase piercing and spreading effects, but he could also save his limited ammunition. At present, Turan only had 5 or 6 specially processed stone bullets left, so he had to use them sparingly. In the midst of these thoughts, Turan looked once more at the divine pit not far away. He could not understand what exactly those nobles were doing inside. Several days had already passed. Should I give up on this place now and head for another city instead? Or maybe I should just go take a look. As long as I sneak in and observe for a bit. If I'm discovered, I'll just run. But at that very moment, 2 voices sounded nearby. Damn it, why is he being so noisy? Can't we make him quiet down a bit? As long as we don't kill him, it should be fine, right? After saying that, the man kicked the sack. Watching them drag the sack into the entrance of the tomb, Turan wondered what exactly was going on. Why would they kidnap an ordinary person? But after Turan followed them into the interior of the tomb, he was astonished to discover that inside the tomb there was a pitch-black vortex, and 3 other people were standing beside it. As for the ordinary man who had been tied up in the sack, once he was untied, he asked in confusion what this thing was. But the person standing before him did not answer his question and merely told him to shut up. Looking at those 3 strange men, Turan was deeply puzzled. They were clearly the kidnappers, so why did they look frightened instead? The bearded man among them gave him an order, telling him to hurry up and carry the goods inside. The order instantly clouded the man's eyes. Without the slightest hesitation, he took the things with him and stepped into the vortex. And Turan, who was hidden not far away, understood very clearly that this should be a control spell cast by that bearded man just now. As he was thinking, their voices sounded again. From what they were saying, Turan learned that what they were doing now was continuously sending water and food to Purga. And the Purga they spoke of was the current candidate to become the next head of the Zahar family. That also explained why they had occupied this place and sealed it off for several consecutive days. Thinking of this, Turan began to consider the matter. Though somewhat risky, this was undoubtedly an excellent opportunity. If he saved that man and made him owe him a favor, then he should be able to naturally infiltrate the Zahar family. However, that reason was not actually important. He had to go in, because what he was looking for was inside. So Turan jumped into the black vortex without hesitation. However, once Turan's body truly entered it, his mind suddenly cleared. He did not understand what exactly had bewitched him just now to make him think of saving Purga and even jumping in here. After passing through the darkness and falling into the underground space, he saw everything before him. At this moment, Purga said in relief, another one finally got in. Looks like those people are still sending people in from outside. But this guy is really a bit noisy. Someone deal with him. We need to save food anyway. The moment his words fell, a foot came straight down onto the man's head. Looking at the figure before him, Turan thought to himself, so this was Purga Zahar. Why had he previously thought of saving him? He did not look like the kind of person who would repay a favor. But at that very moment, a strange voice rang out. No, you are not the Night Hunter. In the distant past, the fertile plains of Enril had once been ruled by giants. With their enormous bodies, they devoured everything along their path and ultimately turned this land into a wasteland. But the giants needed to consume vast amounts of water every day. So after the plains became a desert, they could not endure the thirst. They enslaved humans and drained human blood to drink, slaughtering thousands every day. But on one moonless night, beneath a sky of absolute darkness, the Night Hunter of the Franz gods descended. He used his fists as a bow and his palms as arrows, slaughtered all the giants, saved humanity from the brink of extinction, and took the 3 most beautiful maidens as his wives. These 3 wives also bore him 3 children, who inherited his extraordinary power. The 3 sons were the eldest, who possessed the power of concealment, the second, who could command the shadows, and the third, who could create deadly poison. Afterward, the Night Hunter died. But his sons waged war in order to seize control of the desert. Among them, the eldest son, because he could hide his form and was unwilling to take part in battle against his own brothers, turned and left. So the remaining 2 set off a brutal war. They plunged the desert into turmoil and filled countless people with despair. But in the end, the eldest son returned. He defeated his 2 younger brothers and seized dominion over the desert. And he was the first ancestor of the Zahar family. "No, you are not the Night Hunter," the strange voice echoed in Turan's ears. This made Turan recall the contents of the religious book he had bought in Komad. Why is the name of that god suddenly being mentioned? Could it have something to do with the Zahar nobles who have already entered this place? Strictly speaking, I could also be considered a distant descendant of the Night Hunter, but considering that other bloodlines are mixed into me, I should hardly be regarded as a pure Zahar. But suddenly, a sound came from the distance. The noise made Turan spin around abruptly and stare straight in one direction. There was something there. Under the magic detection enhanced by the holy relic, a bizarre figure stood out in the darkness ahead. It stood there motionless, giving the impression that inside its huge shell there was nothing at all, while flames flowed like liquid and animated that body. Then Turan carefully moved closer to it. Once the distance closed, the life form hidden in the darkness revealed itself before Turan's eyes. It was a malformed naked monster, with countless veins bulging across its powerful muscles. That appearance alone was enough to make one deeply uncomfortable. It suddenly turned its head. Damn it, did it notice me? Almost in the very next instant, 2 monsters just like it appeared beside it and lunged viciously at Turan. As he dodged its claws, Turan marveled at how fast it was. Then he brought both palms together. A powerful surge of flame burst forth from his hands. The intense burning sensation disturbed these monsters that had long dwelt in darkness. Taking advantage of that opening, Turan quickly retreated backward. He wondered how exactly they had detected him, to the point that even the stealth of the Zahar bloodline could be seen through. Fortunately, however, their detection range seemed extremely limited. Turan took a pebble from his pocket. Swinging the whip and using inertia, he made the stone spin at high speed. The stone he launched flew out along a streamlined trajectory. It directly pierced through the head of the monster from before. But its death did not attract the slightest attention from its own kind. This made Turan think that these things really were cold-blooded. Even when one of their own died, they showed no reaction at all. After they left, Turan approached the corpse once again. The instant he lightly raised his hand, Turan noticed that the fluctuation of magic in the corpse was actually extremely weak. Even after killing it, Turan could extract almost no magic from it. And that precisely meant that it might be a magical creature. Logically speaking, with such a robust body, it should have contained more magic. But now, even the holy relic showed no reaction at all. So what exactly was its true identity? The strange voice rang out again, "You are not the Night Hunter." Turan gave no response at all, only finding it unbearably dull, because the voice seemed capable of repeating only a few lines. But suddenly, Turan sensed some movement. At once, he retreated several steps backward. Then the source of that movement appeared. It was Purga's group. Seeing the situation before him, he raised a hand to signal everyone to stop. After observing carefully for a moment, a doubtful voice arose from the group. "What's going on? Have they been here before? Who knows? Their sense of direction has probably already gone to hell." However, despite their doubts, Purga firmly believed there was a rat here. These wounds are fresh. He can't have run far. With that, he ordered Galson to set traps nearby. When his companions asked whether they should first catch that rat, he said, "No need. He's probably just some little knight who survived by luck. Let him run around for a while first. He'll make a perfect lure to draw out those monsters." What they utterly failed to realize was that every one of those words had fallen into Turan's ears. 3 days later, both Turan and Purga's team had discovered the peculiar nature of this separate space. Although Purga's team set traps from the barrier bloodline wherever they went, with the guide's assistance those traps were perfectly clear in Turan's eyes and posed no threat at all. Instead, it was Purga's team that often suffered from the surrounding darkness and ended up triggering their own companions' traps. Unlike them, who could not even find their bearings in the dark, Turan used the power of the holy relic to establish several strongholds as bases, gradually expanding his search range from there. At times, certain passages would pour forth overwhelming numbers of strange creatures, and unless they were cleared out one by one, there was simply no way through. So whenever that happened, Turan chose to borrow the strength of Purga's team. That also meant he gave up the chance to absorb the magic of those monsters. But he did not care, because those bizarre things provided far too little magic to be worth the effort. However, even if several people in the team were killed or wounded, Purga and the others did not care at all, because those who died were not their core members. They only found it somewhat regrettable that no one was left to serve them, which made them feel quite uncomfortable. This behavior filled Turan with contempt. Then, the disturbance coming from the surroundings alarmed them. Damn it, those things are here again. Hurry and dim the lights a little. Looking at these perfect baits, Turan thought to himself that they could keep struggling here if they liked. He was going to probe deeper. Before long, Turan arrived before a strange stone gate. This sight shocked Turan greatly, because the stone gate was simply enormous, looking as though it had been forged for giants. So was this place truly the exit? However, before Turan could think further, a strange eye opened in the center of the stone gate. As the pupil examined him, the eerie voice sounded as well. Hunter, pursuer, conditions not met. After speaking, its gaze shifted slightly downward. It looked at the holy relic hanging at Turan's waist. Wave collar, imitator. Enter? These two titles left Turan deeply puzzled. Could these be the names of the bloodlines already awakened within him? But if it was a combination of two bloodlines, that would mean they were bloodlines of great families. The gate's voice asked Turan again whether he wished to enter. Only then did Turan realize that what it was judging was not bloodline, but power, which was why it evaluated both his bloodline and the powers he possessed together. Thinking of this, he reached toward the holy relic, then asked it, "What exactly are wave collar and imitator? Tell me about them." Its voice rang out in response. Wave collar, primary types, underwater breathing, underwater physical enhancement, fluid manipulation. Imitator, primary types, flow detection, absorption, and replication. Upon hearing this, Turan immediately judged the nature of the gate. It would not respond to those who lacked 4 kinds of power. But ever since obtaining the holy relic, he had never gained abilities like underwater breathing or fluid manipulation. So could it be that this dial served only as a means of identity verification and could not reproduce the original powers? After that, Turan asked again, "Who are you?" It told Turan that it was a gate spirit. That term immediately reminded Turan of the librarian from before. Could it be a similar existence? Yet no matter how he looked at it, this one seemed even less human. As Turan thought this over, he spoke again. "What exactly is this maze? Why was it built? How do I leave here?" At once, it answered Turan's questions. The Night Hunter's Maze. One who possesses 4 correct marks and defeats the Maze Lord shall become the Night Hunter, and the escape route shall be opened. Its answer completely exceeded Turan's expectations. To become the Night Hunter, wasn't that the title of a god? At that very moment, the pupil on the gate suddenly began rotating rapidly. Error. The deep, resonant voice grew more and more twisted and eerie. Error. Hunter, pursuer, wave caller, imitator. 2 types incorrect. Shadow, alchemist, missing. 4 types required. Error. Does not match Night Hunter type. Maze activated incorrectly. Error. Cannot close. Internal personnel still remain. Unauthorized personnel entered. Consult creator. Error. Creator unavailable. Initiating autonomous judgment. Issuing deployment order for Maze Lord. Eliminate remaining internal personnel. As the voice fell, several cracks suddenly split open across the iris of that eye. The gate opened automatically, and through the holy relic sensing ability, Turan detected that something inside was trying to come out. The next moment, a being similar to the earlier monsters, yet far larger, slowly emerged from the darkness beyond the gate. This sight immediately filled Turan's eyes with shock, because unlike the other monsters, its powerful presence could be felt with the naked eye alone. It seemed to be more than 10 times stronger than its kind. Then the massive figure suddenly spoke in a woman's voice. "You are not the Night Hunter. The imposter must die." The instant Turan confirmed it was an enemy, he immediately threw the stone he had prepared in advance, spun it several times, infused it with ample magic, and shot it straight at its head. Afterward, he spread his hands and released a fireball from one and a bolt of lightning from the other. But these attacks caused no effective damage to the monster at all. It strode up to Turan and let out a clicking laugh. So itchy. This made Turan immediately understand that, like those smaller creatures from before, the thing before him possessed a bodily strength even greater than its magic. The instant he realized this, Turan turned and fled to the rear at once. Seeing Turan's movement, the huge monster immediately chased after him, its heavy footsteps and deafening roar sounding together. "Stop, imposter." For a moment, all the monsters wandering through the maze turned toward the source of the sound. Following the direction from which it came, they came charging madly. Faced with so many monsters, although Turan quickly dodged their claws with several sharp-angled evasive movements, he knew very well that trying to avoid these monsters while also being chased by that giant thing was absolutely impossible. At that moment, one monster charged at Turan, swinging 5 hooked claws. Seeing this, Turan raised one hand in defense, pushing the power of his magical tool to the limit. With a tearing sound, the creature's hooked claws actually broke through Turan's defense. This made Turan quickly reach toward his waist, and with the sharp dagger given to him by Laham, he instantly cut through its neck. Looking at the twitching monster before him, Tehran moved again, running through the pitch-black maze. This was actually a place that could make one into a god. Who had created such a rebellious and grotesque place? The moment the lame goddess flashed through Tehran's mind, that massive monster caught up to him again. Empowered by its overwhelming muscles, it suddenly leaped above Tehran's head. That terrifying attack slammed hard into the compacted ground, grazing close against Tehran's body. Seeing this, Tehran slipped between the creature's legs. Using magic to rebound his body away, he got back on his feet and continued running. A situation like this left Tehran no room to think. But the only thing certain was that everything would end only if that creature was killed. Yet from that brief clash just now, he already understood one thing. Alone, he had absolutely no chance of victory. So Tehran's strategy was to fight side by side with that brother who shared the same bloodline. Meanwhile, Purga and his group were in the middle of a fierce battle. The monster before him was cut cleanly in two by the ring blade in his hand. After the battle, Purga asked how everyone was doing and whether anyone was injured. In response, the noble with the berserker bloodline said he was fine, except that there were simply too many monsters around them. It was practically endless. But no sooner had he finished speaking than they heard a strange sound. This caused everyone to turn and look behind them. Very soon, the source of that sound appeared before them, and with it came some incomprehensible words. Yet for some reason, Purga and the others understood the meaning of that sentence directly. Night Hunter, Silver Sun, Wrath of Frost, half-finished ones, enemies of the children, all must die. They could not understand why the huge monster before them dared to speak the names of the Franz gods so directly, and with such intense hatred. But those were not the matters they should be worrying about most right now. Purga immediately decided that everyone should run at once and not stay where they were. Before his words had even finished, the claws on the monster's right hand pierced through the chests of two men. They had never expected that this huge thing not only had an enormous body, but arms whose length exceeded all reason by more than twice. Seeing this, Purga shouted anxiously, "Yubo, Garten." Watching their clansmen be destroyed so cruelly, they made an immediate decision and launched a counterattack. Not one of those with Zahar blood wanted to retreat. The man in the lead thrust out with his sword, driving it straight into the monster's body. But before he could react, a fist smashed heavily into the side of his face. With a heavy thud, half the man's face vanished outright. This sight filled the mage not far away with fury. Condensing scorching flames in his palm, he roared, "You damned monster, D!" But the terrifying creature used only one foot to crush him into a mass of flesh, then swung out its left hand, its immense force gravely injuring two more people. Yet this was not the end. The monster swung the claws of its other hand again, killing two more on the spot. Under its overwhelming power, the other monsters also seized the opportunity. This made Purga's face grow extremely grim. Why have even these little things come too? If this keeps up, all of us will be wiped out by it. At that moment, the noble with the berserker bloodline charged over with a roar, swinging his massive axe and hacking viciously at the monster's shin. Although the monster was injured by this, the noble did not retreat, because in order to gain this brief burst of strength, he had already lost his reason. Seeing one of the monster's knees bend, the man could not help throwing back his head in laughter. "I did it. I smashed its knee." But before he could finish rejoicing, with a bang, the berserker noble's body was kicked flying several meters away. He slammed heavily into the stone pillar behind Purga. This made Purga's expression turn even darker. The corpses scattered across the ground made him realize what the final outcome would be. It was all because of the monster before him. Everything he had built up until now was ruined. So he placed all the blame on the monster and threw the ring blade in his hand with all his strength. But this attack achieved nothing. Seeing this, Purga suddenly caught the ring blade again, then twisted his body and rushed straight along the monster's fist toward its arm. Empowered by immense force, the ring blade carved wound after wound into the monster's arm. Seizing this chance, Purga's body also reached above the monster's head. The instant he raised the ring blade high, he poured all the magic in his body into the weapon. He hurled the weapon in his hand toward the monster's head. This strike, containing all of Purga's power, seemed as though it would completely destroy the creature. It actually severed one of the monster's hands and left a mark across its chest. Just then, the monster turned its terrifying eyes toward Purga. Before Purga could recover himself, its remaining hand, a full 2 meters long, pierced through Purga's chest. This left Purga unable to understand what exactly this ghostly thing before him was, and why it was so monstrously powerful. But at that moment, the monster suddenly shouted, "Come out, false night hunter." This made Purga think, what exactly is this monster looking at? Is killing everyone still not enough for it? No, it seems to be talking to someone. In truth, after luring this monster here, Tehran had been secretly doing his utmost to help them the whole time. Using invisibility magic, he mixed his attacks into the other spells, and with the situation already chaotic, they had never noticed Tehran's existence. But now that the monster had killed everyone, it naturally turned its target toward Tehran. However, Turan did not sit and wait for death. He swung the heavy battle axe left behind by the berserker with both hands, and hacked straight toward the monster's head. This scene made the monster's pupils suddenly contract. "I found you, false night hunter." Before it could even react, the axe in Turan's hands had already struck its neck. With a heavy thud, accompanied by the solid impact transmitted into his palms, the giant axe sank more than halfway into the monster's neck, yet it did not suffer a fatal wound, and instead only roared furiously, "You false night hunter." Seeing this, Turan could not help sighing. Still not enough for a killing blow? The maze lord suddenly swung its severed right arm and smashed it straight at Turan. In an instant, Turan's body was sent flying several meters, crashing into a wall on one side of the maze. Although the attack left Turan aching all over, unlike the times he had been rammed by magical beasts in the past, this level was still something he could endure. Of course, that was due not only to the power of the Guardian magical tool, but also to the improvement in physical ability brought by the strongman bloodline. Even so, if what had struck Turan just now had not been a severed arm, but those claws, then it definitely would not have been so simple. Seeing Turan stand up unharmed, the monster charged toward him at once. "Imposter, die." Seeing this, Turan immediately used the secret technique he had learned earlier from Misha, accelerated thinking, and then employed the short-step combat method taught by Laham. The terrifying claws swept past before Turan's eyes by the narrowest margin. But Turan felt not the slightest fear and swung the axe upward with all his might. With a wet crack, more than half of the maze lord's arm was smashed apart. It let out a cry like weeping. "Bad man, my children, all killed. Night hunter, liar." Perhaps it had gone completely mad, because the maze lord was now rambling disconnected words. And by now, faced with its attacks, Turan could dodge them with ease. It slammed headfirst into the ground, giving Turan an excellent angle for decapitation. With a sharp crack, the weapon in his hand landed another chop into that neck glistening with sticky fluid. Perhaps because the nerves below had been damaged, its body immediately went limp, yet its vitality was still tenacious. Turan swung the axe in his hand several more times, until the final blow, when all his strength was poured into the weapon. The instant the axe fell, its head separated from its body. At once, the magic that had been flowing through the monster's body stopped completely. Only then did Turan confirm that it was dead. After letting out a long breath, Turan threw away the heavy axe in his hand. Thanks to the help of the holy relic, he had temporarily gained that bloodline power from Dolph. Although he now fully understood how to use this holy relic, that understanding was limited only to the imitator. As for the Wavecaller, he still did not understand it. As his awareness focused inward, Turan had already discovered that the power throughout his body was rapidly draining away. At this rate, he would probably lose all of it completely within half an hour. He walked toward the final survivor collapsed in the distance, Purga Zahar. At this moment, he was vomiting blood in great mouthfuls, staring blankly at the ceiling and muttering, "Save me." But Turan could do nothing for his injuries. Because his lungs and the area around one side of his heart had both been pierced through, he was beyond saving. Seeing this, Turan could only say he was sorry. This was beyond the limits of his ability. Through the holy relic senses, he could clearly perceive that the life force remaining in the other man's body was slowly dissipating and gathering. Then he lifted his eyes and swept his gaze over the surroundings. More than 100 dead small monsters, over a dozen nobles, and one powerful maze lord. Leaving aside personal gain, if he did not want all these corpses to revive as undead, then Turan had to absorb their magic. However, for a wizard, the stronger one's own power became, the less meaningful it was to absorb the magic of the weak. And the most effective method was to absorb from weakest to strongest in sequence. Once these powers had all been absorbed, the holy relic also stored several traces of bloodline power. Looking at the clearly layered dial before him, he thought to himself, what would happen if he used multiple bloodlines at the same time? Although he was somewhat curious, that matter could be left for later. Now, Turan's strength was at least twice what it had been when he entered the maze. A level of power like this was something an ordinary noble would need at least 100 years to accumulate. Although it was a pity to abandon the magical tools before him, if he wanted to avoid pursuit by the Zahar family, he had to do it. And on top of that, he also used a tracking spell to find every trace he had left behind, and clean them all away completely. Afterward, Turan once again walked up to the door with the eyeball on it. "I've killed the Lord of the Maze." The eyeball gave no response at all to his words. This made Turan wonder whether, now that the gate stood open, its function had completely ceased as well. As these thoughts passed through his mind, he pushed open the stone door before him. As his gaze swept across the space, a vast hall appeared before him, and at the very center of it was a pitch-black vortex exactly like the one he had entered through. That should be the exit, but he did not leave immediately, and instead decided to look around first. Yet after scanning the place, he found that most of it consisted of useless ornaments. and only beside the throne-like chair at the very top was there a book. On the cover of that book, written in rough, bold lettering, was a striking title, Recreation Experiment of the Night Hunter's Advancement Process. Advancement? Turan kept turning over this word, one he had never heard in his life before. Only when he opened to the title page did he see, Night Hunter equals Hunter plus Pursuer plus Shadow plus Alchemist. And the next page was filled with chaotic notes, seemingly for organizing thoughts, advancement conditions, break through the evil maze. Must it be cleared solo, or can it be done in a group? If the forms of the dungeon and monsters are simulated to the utmost, will that also be regarded as meeting the conditions? Add a temptation function. After thinking it over carefully, Turan understood the meaning of what was written there. It probably meant that there were 4 bloodlines passed down to the descendants of the Night Hunter. Although he still did not fully understand the word advancement, perhaps it could be called a process of becoming a Night Hunter. As for the temptation function, that was probably the source of the inexplicable urge that had lured him into this place. No wonder he had felt such a strong desire to enter here at that time. After swallowing, he continued turning the pages behind it. Monsters, rotten angler catfish. Materials used, giant blood and flesh. Dungeon boss, giant angler catfish. Material used, queen giant. Powered by magic. Lifespan problem handled through hibernation. Method of reproducing acidic blood and fire-breathing skills compared to actual dungeon is too low level. Method for raising upper limit. These words were hard for Turan to fully understand, but based on the content, he roughly inferred that these were records left behind after previous failed experiments. Though much of it was difficult to grasp, one thing could be determined without question. The fundamental goal of the maze's creator was to create a Freya god, or rather, a Night Hunter. Because of the holy relic, the gate earlier had mistaken him for a candidate possessing all 4 of those bloodlines. But in reality, the Shadow and Alchemist bloodlines had long since gone extinct. Judging from the legends passed down in the Emerald Desert, perhaps they had been completely eradicated by the Zahar family long ago. While sorting through his thoughts, Turan suddenly remembered the arsonist from before. Could it be that the method of artificially obtaining bloodlines was also real? After struggling with the thought for quite some time, he finally let out a sigh, then slowly stepped into the vortex. After passing through it, Turan found that he had appeared outside the Tomb of the Gods. Next, he moved to a place of higher elevation and summoned the Black Eagle through their soul bond. The little fellow had only just appeared when it began writing on the ground. Your delay scared me badly. In response, Turan could only apologize. After erasing the traces around him as well, he simply tidied himself up a little. Then he reached out and grabbed the Black Eagle's claws, and under its lead, flew straight up into the sky. Turan understood very clearly that a Zahar family heir candidate, along with the more than 10 nobles he had led, had all been killed. This would absolutely throw the entire desert into turmoil until the culprit was found. Although he had left no trace, he had still prepared for the worst. Once matters here calmed down, he would return to continue investigating clues about his parents. At this moment, the Black Eagle looked down at him as if wondering where they should head now. So Turan pointed into the distance. Let's go in that direction. After a day and a half of flying, they left the edge of the desert region and arrived at a range of undulating white rocky mountains. This was the so-called Gray Zone, and also the former battleground between Albion and Zahar. Not far ahead, a strange procession suddenly appeared. Every one of them wore exhausted expressions, as if they did not even have the strength to speak, and only moved slowly toward the southeast. Even when Turan stood near them, they showed no intention of paying him any attention. Following the direction they had come from, he arrived at an enormous city. Perhaps because it lay deep within the mountains, the entire city was backed against a huge cliff, and its walls stood in a half-dome shape. Seeing Turan, the guard outside the gate tilted his head in confusion. A traveler? But what's with that bird, and those thin clothes? But in the next moment, he seemed to realize something, and his face suddenly turned pale. Welcome, my lord. May I ask which great family you come from? This made Turan think to himself that next time, if he wanted to disguise himself as a commoner the way he used to, he would have to buy a thick padded coat or drape himself in fur. After thinking it over, he answered their question. I'm merely a traveler passing through. May I ask whether I could request lodging for one night from the lord here? Yet after hearing his reply, the guard began stammering for some reason. Kalamap no longer has a lord now. He recently died in a dark elf attack in the west, so at present the city has no noble or knight ruling it. Hearing this, Turan thought, this is troublesome. But at that moment, the man who had spoken to Turan earlier suddenly dropped to his knees. Noble lord, I beg you, please become the ruler of the city. Turan refused this request without a second thought, because he did not want to be bound to a place like this. But after seeing the state this place was in, he also could not continue ignoring them. So he asked the man to first explain what exactly had happened here. Derek began explaining the current situation. About 3 weeks ago, the corpses of several magical beast hunters appeared at the road in the west of the city. Not only had they died horribly, even their steel weapons had been cleanly severed. Because it was clearly the trace of a very powerful magical beast, the head of the family ruling the city sent out his younger brother and son, leading 10 knights to subjugate it, but not a single one of those lords returned. Unable to bear it, the family head abandoned the defense of the city and led the remaining knights westward himself. But a few days later, only one knight returned alive, covered in wounds. Not long afterward, that knight also died, but before his death he uttered the word, undead. At this, Tehran was immediately drawn by the name. But Derek continued his explanation. A scholar told us that if something could command undead, then it must be dark elves. Once this rumor spread to the others, they chose to flee this place. Hearing this, Tehran could not help asking, didn't you seek help from nearby cities? But he said that they had sent messengers several times and had been refused every time. Those people said that in such a situation, they did not want to divide their forces. At this point, Tehran suddenly understood. They were probably afraid of taking losses themselves. After learning the rough situation, he stood up. It seemed that dealing with matters here would be very difficult. His standing up made Derek immediately kneel again. Please, you must become the master of the city. Weak sheep ultimately need a shepherd to protect them. Please show mercy. Comparing nobles to shepherds and commoners to sheep made Tehran think of his mother. So he calmly asked, is this metaphor a common saying here? Hearing this, Derek said sincerely, this saying has always been passed down in this gray zone. Nobles are shepherds, knights are sheepdogs, and commoners are the flock. Sheep must follow the sheepdogs, and sheepdogs, while protecting the flock, must also obey the shepherd's rules. These words made Tehran quite certain that his mother had either been born in this place, or had stayed here for a period of time, because he had never heard such a saying in other regions before. Then he took out the portrait of his mother that he carried with him and asked, have you seen this person before? Around 20 years ago, she should have been about 20 years old. After observing it carefully, Derek shook his head. My deepest apologies, but if you wish, I can distribute identical copies of this portrait throughout the city to confirm it. As he spoke, the corners of his eyes suddenly grew moist, and he looked straight at Tehran. Seeing those resolute eyes, Tehran understood very clearly what they meant. If he wanted to find his mother, then he had to stop this city from falling first. After sighing, he said, as I said before, I cannot become the master of the city, but being its protector is still barely possible. This caused the hope to rekindle in Derek's previously dejected expression. My lord, by protector, do you mean? Tehran finished the sentence for him. That's right. I mean I will stay here temporarily to protect this city until the threat in the west is removed, or until this city has a suitable lord. Not long afterward, Derek gathered together the few people remaining in the city. At the hastily arranged welcoming ceremony, a guard announced to the crowd, a savior has descended upon our city. He is a noble descendant of the gods and stands with us, so none of you need fear anymore. However, once the citizens saw Tehran's face clearly, they began whispering among themselves, is that really the Lord? But no matter how you look at him, he doesn't seem any different from an ordinary person. Even when the soldiers stepped in to stop them, the mocking voices did not cease. Seeing this, Tehran suddenly recalled the scene in which the head of Albion had displayed a thunderstorm. At the time, he had only thought it was a meaningless show of vanity, but now it seemed that such behavior truly was necessary. To reassure the flock, he had to display his strength. So he decided to try it. In any case, there was not a single wizard here. As flames rose in his palm, the crowd around the square fell instantly silent. However, his display had only just begun. He compressed the flames as much as possible, then lowered their temperature little by little. At last, he sent the fire shooting straight into the sky, piercing through the blizzard above the crowd's heads. Several hundred meters above the square, a crimson light exploded with a roar. The scene looked as though blazing fire had devoured the bitter cold frost. The people of Kalamap were utterly shaken by the powerful aftershock. They stared upward in complete disbelief. They simply could not believe that the sky, once covered in cold, was now burning. That sight alone gave them an unprecedented sense of security. They also came to fully believe that Tehran was their savior. But what happened afterward put him in rather a bad mood. Sitting before Tehran now were several of the upper figures directing the city's operations. Some argued that materials should come first, and that wood and house repairs had to be dealt with before anything else, lest people freeze to death. Others believed food was more important, because supplies were already desperately scarce. As he listened quietly to them argue, Tehran suddenly voiced his own view. He would deal with the food problem himself. The moment he said this, the noisy hall fell utterly silent. Then an older merchant cautiously asked, then, Lord Protector, what method do you intend to use to solve the food problem? Tehran said that he would go around the nearby area and drive whatever animals he saw back to Kalamap, first meeting the citizens' needs, and then salting or smoking the rest, which should be enough to get them through the winter. Everyone's eyes widened. Lord Protector, we absolutely do not mean to doubt you. But is it really acceptable to use power granted by the gods on such lowly work? As soon as the words were spoken, Tehran dispelled their unease. On the northern docking plains, the nobles there strike the land with lightning after the harvest, because that makes the soil more fertile the following year. There is no difference between that and what I am about to do now. After the meeting ended, he flew a great circle around Kalimap. He expanded the holy relic's perception to its maximum in order to catch the presence of animals hiding among the gray rocky mountains. Then he cast a control spell and made them all head toward the city. With a low command from Tehran, the animals began moving one after another, whether goats, rabbits, wolves, or leopards. Although the scene was extremely shocking, it did not consume much of his magic, because for Tehran, who had controlled flocks since childhood as naturally as breathing, this was hardly different from throwing stones. Meanwhile, the people who had long been waiting at the city gate were already staring in complete shock. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they could never have believed such a thing truly existed. This made them even more certain that their Lord Protector was far stronger than the previous Lord had ever been. After that, everyone began separating hide from flesh. With all the guards mobilized and the citizens newly inspired, things progressed very smoothly. After solving the food issue, Tehran prepared to open the estate in the city center that had originally belonged to the ruling family. The guards were puzzled by this order. Then what about you, Lord Protector? Where do you plan to stay? To this, Tehran said that the lodging conditions in City Hall were already sufficient, and that the bed there felt quite comfortable. Thus, this order, carrying almost the authority of divine decree, was immediately carried out. The citizens, who would never in their lives have had the chance to enter the Lord's estate, were deeply moved by what they saw. The shepherd was not butchering the flock, but cutting off his own flesh to feed it, and they did not know how they could ever repay such kindness. But Tehran did not care about such praise. He only wanted to restore the city as quickly as possible so that he could search for clues about his mother. Within a few days, several cities around Kalimap also noticed the changes there. Baijin was a city more than 3 days' journey from Kalimap. After hearing the news, its lord exclaimed, "Protector of the city? That is quite an interesting title. Then how old is he?" Meanwhile, in Balan Castle, one subordinate reported to his master, "The magic that Protector used can cover the sky above the entire city." After hearing this, the Lord of Balan thought to himself that for someone so young to possess such power, he was either a fortunate child who had happened to accumulate a certain amount of strength, or a genius deliberately cultivated by some great family. Heron Castle was different. What puzzled them was why, of all times, Tehran had appeared beside Albion's territory, and had even taken possession of an empty shell of a city. So they began speculating about his name. After thinking of several names, he felt that Tehran Zahar had the best ring to it and sounded the smoothest. Yet at this very moment, Tehran was busy guiding everyone through the next stage of work. He had no idea that, in all his confusion, he had already been tacitly recognized by the rulers of the Gray Zone as Kalimap's protector. Once the city had regained a certain degree of order, he had Derek make multiple copies of the portrait of his mother and distribute them throughout the city. In this matter, Tehran did not hold much hope. Although the Gray Zone was not densely populated, it still contained 8 cities and more than 100 villages of all sizes, so the chance of finding a clue remained extremely slim. Looking at the guard standing before him, he asked, "Another report has come in?" "Yes, Lord Protector. Although over the past week I have brought you nothing but disappointment, this time the situation seems a little different. There is a man named Igan. He once ran an inn, but it later collapsed because of gambling. However, about 18 or 19 years ago, he saw a woman whose appearance was extremely similar to the one in the portrait. Until now, Tehran had already heard 1 or 2 similar leads, but this time the feeling was clearly different, because the man had not stiffly said 20 years ago, but had vaguely referred to 18 or 19 years ago instead. Not long later, a slovenly man walked into City Hall, but the moment he entered, he dropped to the ground and shouted, "Oh great protector of the city, what an honor it is to meet you. If not for your charity this time, I'd probably already have died in the street like a dog. The matter you asked about happened before I lost everything, when I was still properly running my inn. That was 18 years ago, a point in time now somewhat blurred. At that time, Kalimap was in chaos because of the war between Albion and Zahar. Though it was not as hopeless as it is now, everyone feared choosing the wrong side, feared that the army of the opposing family would sack the whole city. It was under those circumstances that a young woman came to the inn I was running. She looked to be around 20 years old. And of course, the reason I remember so clearly is that it was rare enough for a single woman to travel alone. And on top of that, she had with her a rather tall and strong fine horse, which naturally left a deep impression. And her anxious, uneasy manner. as if she were hiding everywhere she went, made me even more curious just what kind of bastard could abandon such a beauty. This made Taran ask on the spot, "Why did you think she had been abandoned?" But Igen answered that it was because while eating, she would always stroke her belly and mutter to herself, "My child, you must never become like your father." Cut to the bedroom, Taran was back on the bed. Although it's still too early to draw a conclusion, the woman he saw must be my mother. Even so, Taran still could not understand what that line, "You must never become like your father," really meant. As thoughts churned in his mind, the black eagle at his side suddenly asked Taran if it hurt. Taran told it that he was not in pain, his mind was just a little confused. Because it was now so linked with Taran, Taran's feelings would also affect it indirectly. Taran raised his hand and gently stroked its head, which made its gaze grow even sharper. After that, it began writing again. It told Taran that it had already decided on its own name, Voyage. This shocked Taran greatly. Seeing the look on Taran's face, it explained, "Your head hurts because there is no Voyage, so I will be Voyage." Hearing that, Taran reminded it, "You mean you want to replace my mother and become Voyage?" At that point, he could not help but sigh and tell it to be more careful when choosing a name. But it said that it had thought about it for a long time and had already made up its mind. Seeing how insistent it was, Taran said to it, "If that's the case, then from now on, your name will be Voyage. I'm looking forward to traveling with you from now on. We've rested enough by now, haven't we, Voyage? Do you want to go out and scout?" The Black Eagle did not refuse Taran's suggestion. After they flew out through the window, the others outside saw the scene and cried out one after another, "Look, it's the Black Eagle, and Lord Protector of Kalimap. Honored sir, please protect this city forever." Hearing these words in the air, Taran could not help thinking to himself, forever? But he had always intended to leave this city one day, so now this was troublesome. Perhaps that was also the reason Taran never wanted to stop in any one place. Afterward, under Voyage's lead, Taran shot rapidly into the sky. With the help of detection magic and the power of the holy relic, Taran scanned all the surrounding mountains, yet still found no trace of any dark elves. Could it be that they had all moved away? This question left Taran deeply puzzled. Because visible enemies were not truly frightening. The real trouble was the enemies who fled for now and would later come back again. Just then, Taran vaguely sensed something. It was an extremely powerful fluctuation of magic. It did not seem to be a ghost, but a wizard, and the other party's power was more than twice Taran's. But what surprised Taran was that in the next second, that power came straight toward him. Did it find me? From this far away, just as Taran was about to have Voyage keep flying south, the source of that power drew his attention, because that way of flying felt very familiar to him. Wind? In only a moment, she had already arrived in front of Taran. Looking at Taran's face, she slowly spoke and called his name. Long time no see. When Taran recognized that it was Misha, he descended from the sky, and began talking with her. Misha said that the last time she had seen Taran was only 3 or 4 months ago. But why had Taran changed so much in just a few short months? As if he had suddenly grown into an adult? Just then, Voyage lightly pecked at the corner of Taran's clothing a few times. It asked Taran who the woman in front of them was. Seeing this, Taran explained Misha's identity to it, and at the same time mentioned the Black Eagle to Misha as well. When Misha learned that the Black Eagle could write, she immediately praised it and said it was amazing. Hearing that, the Black Eagle proudly puffed out its chest. Seeing it like that, Misha also smiled and said that she was truly envious and wanted a companion like that too. But speaking of which, how did you end up here? This isn't really a place suited for traveling, is it? Hearing this, Taran explained the whole course of events to her. That made her seem to understand at once. I see. Perhaps this matter is connected to us as well. Because when Albion's army destroyed the underground kingdom earlier, a ghost wizard really did escape. He is most likely the culprit. Because he must have fled east in order to replenish his ghost army. He is very likely hiding in the mountains, among the settlements of the blind dwarves. At the words dwarves, Karan immediately looked toward the mountains beside them. Could the blind dwarfs you're talking about be those ones from the legends? Misha answered firmly. According to the tales, those dwarf settlements in the mountains are bottomless, and even the gods were unable to completely conquer them. Fortunately, he did not continue farther east, and for certain reasons, it is also difficult for us to enter the gray zone. At this, Taran asked her, is it because of Zahar? She did not deny it, only nodded. Yes. But I should be leaving now, because I was away for too long just now. If there's another chance next time, tell me more about your travels. After saying that, her figure instantly shot up into the sky. After Misha left, Taran turned to look at the Black Eagle, but he found that it had already written some words on the ground, roughly meaning that Misha's soul matched well with it too. This made Taran unable to resist asking, if you had met Misha first instead of me, would you have chosen her too? The Black Eagle did not hesitate in the slightest. It told Taran that it had already chosen Taran, so Misha would have no chance. Hearing that, although Turan was very pleased, he also realized that he really did need to think seriously about this matter. Why would it say that among everyone, only Misha and Turan were people who could match it perfectly? A few days later, while Turan was working hard at practicing magic, a guard from City Hall came to report to him that several distinguished guests had arrived. And these so-called distinguished guests were in fact a joint delegation formed by the surrounding cities. No sooner had they stepped into City Hall than they took the initiative to explain who they were. Seeing this, Turan got straight to the point and asked them exactly why they had come to see him. The leader spoke directly. Then, "Honored sir, allow me to briefly explain the situation as this delegation's representative. In fact, we have come only to form a marriage alliance with your 7 great families. We will offer the most beautiful sons and daughters of our families as your concubines, and they will certainly help your household prosper." The moment he heard this, Turan immediately understood that they must have learned that the Western danger had already been eliminated, so they wanted to seize the initiative early and gain control of Kalamap. While Turan was thinking this, another person in the delegation offered his own suggestion as well. Indeed, Lord Protector, ruling a territory requires knights to command it. If you ally with us through marriage, would that not also be the best way to strengthen friendship? Although the suggestion sounded reasonable, Turan still rejected it directly, and instead put forward his own conditions to them. "I need you to investigate the whereabouts of a woman who traveled through the gray zone around 20 years ago. Whichever family can bring me the most valuable information, I will hand over the right to rule this place to them." At these words, everyone showed stunned expressions, unable to understand why Turan would choose to hand over an entire city for the sake of learning one woman's whereabouts. But before they had even recovered, he proposed a second condition. Whoever took over the city must swear in the name of the god Franz that they would protect the citizens here, and if they broke that oath, their right to rule would be stripped away. This made one of them unable to resist asking, "Forgive my boldness, Lord Protector, but why would you do this? As far as the common people here are concerned, I believe you have already done more than enough." Hearing this, Turan merely gave a faint laugh and did not answer, because even he himself could not clearly explain why he wanted to do it. Perhaps it was because he wanted to fulfill a shepherd's duty. In this cruel world, was it not exactly a shepherd's role to protect the sheepdogs and the flock, and keep them from being torn apart by evil wolves? At that moment, Turan suddenly sensed something. That was a knight, and a knight with an extremely powerful presence at that. He was somewhat puzzled. Who exactly was this person, to charge all the way into City Hall without even being announced? Seeing this, Turan suddenly flipped down from the rooftop, and rushed straight towards City Hall not far away. However, when Turan arrived at that place, he discovered that the person who had come was Kane, who had once taught him.